Everyone to our regular city council meeting being held May 20th, 2025 here at City Hall at 7:13 p.m. A little late on our start. We had an RDA meeting as well as a work session with the Ferguson group presenting to us. Let's go ahead with we excuse Mayor. He's asked that I conduct this meeting in his absence as Mayor Pro Tem. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote so we can do the city's business. Councilmember Meekum?
Meekum present.
Heyman present.
Summerhays present?
Hurst present.
Plummer present.
Great, all 5 members here in attendance, so thank you. Tonight we have our legislative prayer of thought by Councilmember Plummer.
Thank you, Councilmember Summerhays. I will say a prayer. Our Father in heaven, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and serve the people of Centerville. We're so grateful for that opportunity to work and do the things that our community needs to become a better place for our residents. Thank you so much for the people that work tirelessly to serve our community, the staff, the police, and thank you for the moisture that we've received this past week. We're grateful for that, and please bless us with the ability to have kindness and clear thoughts tonight as we go through tonight's agenda, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I've asked Chief Stewart to lead us in our pledge since we don't get to see him very often with us.
Awesome.
All who are able, please rise. Repeat allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Stewart. Appreciate that. You're going to present to us a little later on one of our business items, so bear with us while we go through a couple of presentations. But first, we have our open session where we have members of the public make comment. If we do have any members of the public, please limit your comments to 2 to 3 minutes and state your name and residence of record. So we'll open that up to public comment right now, while we have maybe those in attendance personally here. Is there anybody online, Jennifer, that you see? Okay, seeing none, we will close that open session. Tonight we have 2 presentations, the first of which is SWCA Environmental Consultants. And Lily Wetterlin, do I have your last name pronounced?
I'm actually filling in for Lily.
Okay, sorry,
So,
please introduce
no
yourself.
problem.
Or do we have any staff introduction first for SWCA, Brett?
Had a request to be placed on the agenda. I did some research, looked at the website, and had some pretty interesting things on there, so that's all I've done.
Okay,
So-
and we appreciate, it looks like it's a friendly member of our community
Yes, my
nearby,
client, yes.
former Representative Hawks with you,
Great.
so.
Representative and resident of Centerville here with me.
Great, yeah, so if you could introduce yourself, and we look forward to your presentation.
I'm Erica Gaddis. I'm Senior Water Resources Director at SWCA, and I'm here on behalf of the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council. I'm here with Tim Hawks, is the chair of the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council, and we're here to talk to you tonight about water conservation. We have a little bit of an unconventional presentation because there are so many partners in the state that are interested in talking to city councils across the basin about this topic. Rather than bring 5 different presentations and pepper you with all of these different entities, we've put together a recorded presentation with all of the partners so that you get a sense of all of the tools and support that's out there, kind of the issues around water conservation. And then I'm here with Tim to answer any questions you have about water conservation. In particular, we're interested in the council considering, what else you can do as a city to help in the water conservation efforts that we're making across the basin. So with that, I'll just let you go forward with the recorded presentation. You are our first council in this project. We're trying to talk to
We're
at
your
least.
guinea pigs tonight?
Yes, so you're guinea pigs tonight, and we hope this goes well.
we're glad that we've been seen as a friendly audience.
That's right.
The Great Salt Lake Advisory Council was established in 2010 to provide guidance to the state of Utah on the sustainable use, development, and protection of Great Salt Lake. In collaboration with the Utah Legislature and various conservation organizations, the council is currently focused on maintaining adequate water flows to the lake. In this presentation, the council has teamed up with a suite of conservation partners to provide an overview of water conservation tools that are available to cities and towns. Municipal and domestic water conservation remains vital to protect and preserve Great Salt Lake. Conservation efforts at the community level not only sustain tens of millions of migratory birds and critical local industries, they also help preserve Utah's future by reducing the risk of harmful dust storms from the dry lake bed. Without widespread municipal and domestic conservation, the Great Salt Lake faces continued declines and the kind of devastating environmental and economic consequences that have happened when other large terminal lakes have dried up.
Effective water conservation starts with a shared understanding of key concepts that are commonly used in water conversations. Let's start with the differences between diversions and depletions, terms that are commonly used in water conservation goals and transactions. Diversion refers to removing water from its natural source, such as a river or reservoir, for use in irrigation or drinking water systems. A lot of this water returns to the natural system as treated wastewater or irrigation return flow. Depletion, however, occurs when water is consumed and cannot be reused, such as when it evaporates or is taken up by plants. Outdoor water use, particularly lawn irrigation, often leads to depletion, making it a primary focus for conservation efforts. By reducing outdoor water use, we can significantly lower overall depletion and protect this vital resource. Another critical strategy is shepherding water to the Great Salt Lake. This means ensuring water reaches the lake rather than being diverted or consumed along the way by other users. Finally, water-efficient landscaping refers to practices like reducing or replacing turf lawns with native or drought-tolerant plants. These practices can save significant amounts of water from depletion while supporting local ecosystems.
Utah is constantly in drought or preparing for the next, so conservation is just as important during low water years as in a normal one. When the Great Salt Lake hit record lows in 2022, more people than ever realized how dire the situation was. We saw unprecedented interest, legislation, and investment. The state has grown its understanding of how the Great Salt Lake works, its value, and the importance of maintaining it as a resource for economic, environmental, and recreational opportunities. However, there's still work to do. We need help from everyone to conserve water, and municipalities play a vital role. You'll see in our baseline scenario, with average inflows, the chances of achieving healthy ranges are not in our favor. Additional conservation is needed to shift the long-term downward trend to a positive one, and regional conservation goals will get us there and on our way to healthier levels.
The state's regional water conservation goals, established in 2019, are for Utah's 9 municipal and industrial river districts, which are represented by members on the Board of Water Resources. River districts and conservation regions align with the boundaries of one or more counties. Each region has a goal percentage of water reduction to meet by 2030, expressed in terms of diversions. It is important to note that these goals are currently being updated. While communities should strive to meet their percent reduction goal according to the 2019 report, they should be aware that it might change. The Division of Water Resources or your local water conservancy district can help answer questions related to water conservation goals.
Our office has established a goal of 10% reduction in depletion across the Great Salt Lake Basin. Data from Dr. David Tarbon at Utah State University shows that this amount, or 250,000 acre-feet of additional water annually, could be enough to shift the long-term downward trend to a positive one. Once it's conserved, we need to dedicate and deliver it to the lake. Conserve, dedicate, and deliver means working with all agencies, districts, cities, and parties involved in the lake to help preserve and protect it. We need conservation, but that's not the only piece. Once the water is conserved, we need to dedicate it to the Great Salt Lake and make sure it's delivered there. We all use water. That means we all get to play a part in responsibly managing our supply.
There are two important recent state requirements that relate to municipal water conservation. First, all counties and most cities are required to update their general plan with a water use and preservation element by December 31st, 2025. This new element should include a water budget and conservation methodology. The Division of Water Resources, Division of Drinking Water, and Department of Ag and Food can help municipalities with these planning requirements. Second, in the 2025 session, the Utah Legislature passed House Bill 274, which among other things requires that municipal water suppliers adopt a water conservation-related rate for the highest block unit of water used by residential customers in a tiered conservation rate structure. The rate charged will fund water conservation efforts by the municipality and must be adopted by July 1st, 2027. Utah Waterways has resources to help cities with customized rate structures that meet this requirement. Various organizations have created tools and resources to help municipalities achieve their water conservation goals. The Great Salt Lake Water Conservation Toolbox offers practical tools such as model ordinances, example rate structures, and incentives and rebate programs. Each tool drives changes through distinct approaches. Ordinances enforce behaviors with consequences for non-compliance. Rate structures use financial incentives to encourage reduced water usage, and incentives and rebates reward actions like installing water-efficient appliances. Together, these methods influence behavior through regulation, economic motivation, and positive reinforcement. Additional support comes from initiatives like Slow the Flow, which provide guidance for reducing water use and enhancing efficiency. The Growing Water Smart Workshop brings together city and county staff to integrate water and land use planning, fostering collaboration and implementing policies that promote water efficiency, smart growth, and watershed health. These workshops are crucial for Utah communities to meet their water needs and adapt to current and future challenges, aligning with the state's integrated water and land use planning requirements. The Utah Watershed Councils Act established local watershed councils, including the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council, as platforms for diverse stakeholders to improve water-related communication and coordination. These tools, resources, and collaborative efforts empower your communities to plan for growth while ensuring sustainable water use and meeting long-term conservation goals. The Great Salt Lake Advisory Council, with support from SWCA, has developed model outdoor and indoor water ordinances that cities can adopt to enhance water conservation efforts. These ordinances are featured in the Great Salt Lake Water Conservation Toolbox report, which includes a dedicated chapter explaining how cities can customize ordinances to meet their specific goals and needs. The Outdoor Water Use Ordinance outlines key requirements for water-efficient landscaping and irrigation practices, including guidelines for landscape design and materials, irrigation schedules, advanced irrigation technology design, and the use of secondary water systems. The Indoor Water Use Ordinance complements these efforts by focusing on water efficiency inside buildings. It includes requirements for high-efficiency fixtures that reduce water consumption and guidelines for timely leaks repairs to prevent unnecessary water loss. Together, these ordinances provide cities with practical tools to promote conservation while maintaining flexibility to address local needs. By adopting new water conservation ordinances, cities can take meaningful steps towards protecting the Great Salt Lake and ensuring sustainable water use for future generations. The Great Salt Lake Water Conservation Toolbox report features a table that outlines low, moderate, and high conservation standards for each user classification. For example, grass lawns for single-family residential properties and secondary water users shall account for no more than 50% of the front and side yard landscaped area under the low standard, and 20% under the high standard. More aggressive standards apply to multifamily residential, industrial and commercial, and public institutional users, where the low standard limits grass lawns to 30% of the total landscape area, and the high standard prohibits grass lawns entirely. These customizable standards allow cities to tailor their conservation efforts to meet diverse needs while achieving meaningful water savings.
Each municipality is different, and so are its needs, opportunities, and policy constraints. While the Great Salt Lake Water Conservation Toolbox offers model ordinances and policy strategies, cities seeking to conserve water may need additional help determining which approaches best fit their unique needs or help adapting model language to their unique circumstances. The Great Salt Lake Project at the University of Utah College of Law provides free, specialized support to fill this gap. We offer complimentary, in-depth reviews of municipal water conservation programs and identify realistic opportunities tailored to each city's context. For cities interested in updating or adopting water conservation ordinances, we can help select, adapt, or draft ordinances that align with local needs, utilizing broader tools available in the toolbox. We offer additional support for other policy development and for seeking grants, legislative appropriations, or other funding to help offset the costs of conservation initiatives. These services are designed to work hand in hand with the resources in the toolbox.
On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about custom rate structures. However, before we do, I want to outline a few policy considerations. Because reliable access to water is a cornerstone of most urban and suburban areas, there's often a desire to ensure that the money paid to water providers is sufficiently large and predictable to support the development and maintenance of appropriate water delivery systems. This motivation may encourage, at least in part, the funding of water provision with taxes. Equity-based arguments may motivate some policymakers to work towards ensuring that water is priced such that all residents can afford to meet their basic needs. This may encourage adoption of tiered water rate structures in which the volume of water sufficient to meet basic needs such as drinking, cooking, lawn irrigation, and gardening is delivered to a meter at a low cost. Then, as the volume of water delivered to a customer increases, the per unit cost of the water increases. Finally, development goals have led some localities to adopt pricing strategies for commercial industrial users that differ from the pricing strategies applied to residential customers. Commercial or industrial pricing strategies are often intended to attract large commercial enterprises or industry to an area in order to stimulate the economy. Alternatively, in some water-stressed areas, industrial water pricing is used to discourage water-intensive industries from joining a community. Now, as Utah Waterways explains the next slide, don't ask yourself what rate structure or conservation tool you want to adopt. Instead, ask yourself what it is you're trying to accomplish. From that answer, sound policy will flow.
As discussed earlier, there are new state requirements for municipalities to adopt tiered rate structures. And this is up by virtue of the adoption of HB 274 by the state legislature in the last session. As a result, now is a great time for a municipality to begin reviewing its current water rate structure and the methodology used to design its rates. Using established rate design principles, tiered water rates can be designed to meet annual revenue requirements, provide for public acceptability, affordability, fairness and equity among user classes, and still encourage efficient use of water and elimination of wasteful water use practices. When you do look at your rates, it is recommended that you consider reducing or minimizing base charges in the cost of water to your customers by placing the majority of the cost in the volumetric rates, those tiered rates, which are charged by using established and proven rate design principles. Water rates can then be designed to provide an optimum pricing signal for good water conservation results and still achieve other important objectives of the municipality. Take a look at HB 274. It's a very interesting bill.
Residential customers statewide can take advantage of rebate programs to save water and money. You can receive up to $100 for installing a WaterSense labeled smart irrigation controller and up to $150 for replacing a pre-1994 toilet with a WaterSense labeled model. For commercial customers and cities, additional rebate options are available. Reach out to the Division of Water Resources for more details. The Landscape Incentive Program offers up to $3 per square foot for lawn replaced with water-efficient landscaping. This program is open to most property types, excluding golf courses, agricultural lands, sod farms, athletic fields, and parks. To qualify, the project must be in a community with water-efficient landscape standards for new development. These standards support better water resource planning as communities grow. Requirements and incentive amounts vary by location, and we can help connect you with the right agency. Email us at waterwise@utah.gov for more information. Currently, 67% of the Great Salt Lake Basin population lives in an eligible area. For eligibility details, incentive amounts, program guidelines, and applications, visit slowtheflow.org. Together, we can conserve water and promote sustainable landscaping.
The Utah Water Value Study was recently completed by Envision Utah. Utah Waterways served as the managing partner. The study was funded by Utah Waterways, the Utah Division of Water Resources, Great Salt Lake Commission, and the Nature Conservancy. Utahns now see low or moderate lawn landscaping as the most preferred options for Utah. While lawnless yards are still the least preferred in most areas of the state, the level of acceptance over the past decade has continued to rise. Utah Waterways is partnering with the Utah League of Cities and Towns to create recommendations and resources to improve municipal participation and success with water conservation objectives. 4 demonstration projects are underway in Salt Lake County that will not only demonstrate how water-wise landscapes should look, but meticulously document how to achieve the transformation through a series of videos which will be professionally filmed. The results will be advertised through the Slow the Flow campaign, and viewers will be directed to existing resources and programs to help them achieve similar results. The Utah Plant Selector was also launched this spring to simplify the plant selection process for homeowners. The tool will also help us capture data that can be used as a means to get more Utah-happy plants into production so that our local plant supply chain can scale along with our conservation efforts, while also benefiting agriculture and businesses here in Utah. Utah Waterways has assumed management of the statewide water conservation campaign, Slow the Flow. We will continue to coordinate with existing agency partners and seek to add more public and private sector partners to the campaign to contribute to the effort. It is critically important to have one marketing campaign that can drive to the many resources. Significant effort has already been expended by the partnering agencies to streamline and clarify the message while still appropriately directing inquiries to the correct resources.
In summary, Utah's water conservation partners are working together to help set attainable and fair water conservation goals, research and develop new tools that are relevant for Utah communities, and to provide municipalities with implementation support and outreach assistance. However, successful implementation of new ordinances, rates, rebates, and education relies on water conservancy districts, cities, and counties. We hope the tools and resources discussed in this presentation will help you make decisions for your community that contribute to our shared goal to improve flows to the Great Salt Lake and prepare Utah communities for growth.
If we all voluntarily do our part, we can avoid costly and disruptive solutions mandated by courts or federal agencies. In short, Utah can show the way. We look forward to partnering with cities and counties throughout the basin to implement strategies that work for Utah's communities and that will benefit Great Salt Lake.
Well, there it is.
Thanks,
As you
Erica.
can see, there's many different organizations, different roles in this space, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We have a copy of the presentation we can bring up if you want to revisit any of those slides and ask any questions. Centerville is not one of the communities right now that is eligible for the rebates because the ordinances you have don't yet qualify, so that's something for you to perhaps consider. And certainly there's resources here. We'll share with you after some contacts and links for all of the resources that your staff can use to help with whatever next steps you want to take.
Jan?
I would like to ask if you can go back to the one that has in the right-hand corner S.J. Quinney College of Law, the ordinance assessments and tailored policy advice.
Yes.
Right there.
Oh,
You
back
just
up.
passed it.
One
One
more.
more.
Oh, okay. There we go. And then we'll look at the next one too. Who are we contacting for a free audit? And the reason I'm asking is because on the next slide you show the tiered block water rate structure. We have some potential funding in our budget next year to cover a study for that.
Yep.
But gosh, if there's some things we can get some help with, that would be awesome.
It's the
in
law
my
school.
opinion.
Yep, at the University of Utah, and we will provide that contact information. We have a little handout with all the links and email addresses. And then Utah Waterways is available to help you look at your rates and help you assess a new tiered rate structure.
Okay. I was going to say, I just want to say thank you for providing this information. I feel like this is something that we have not heard in this format or all of this information collectively together, and it's very helpful in understanding. I just met last week with Brant and Weber Basin to talk about the rebate program, and this is additionally very helpful to trying to figure out what is the right thing to do for Centerville.
Excellent. Well, we want to, I think one of the main messages is that you're not alone. There are lots of resources out there. It can maybe be challenging to navigate, so we're hoping that this makes it a little easier to figure out who's there to help you with each different piece. But
Is there someone on your staff, Erica, or staffs collectively, because this is a lot of different entities, that could help us, obviously outside of our ordinance to qualify, but maybe there are additional efforts, policies, this toolbox that you're referring to that we're not implementing, that we could, with the caveat that at a reasonable cost, both in terms of capital and personnel demands. Does that question make sense?
Absolutely. So there's really kind of four pieces that you can think about. There's your ordinance, there's your rates, your tiered rates. There's any incentives or rebates that you want to either qualify for at the state level, or you could, some municipalities offer additional incentives to their residents. And then there's that planning piece of integrating your water plan with your general land plan. And there are different entities out there to help you with each of those four components.
And is there someone on one of the staffs that could just provide us a bullet point list specifically that says, for Centerville City, these are some of the areas which we feel you're deficient in and maybe you could consider?
I would recommend starting with Utah Waterways. That's part of their role, kind of as the water conservation conveners across the state. But you're welcome to reach out to myself and to Lily Wetterlin. I think you have her contact information. We're on contract with the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council really to help get this information disseminated. So we'll make sure that kind of more city-specific contacts for you. Happy to do that.
It sounds like with regard to rates, I mean, by 2027, all cities that are serving more than 10,000 people are going to be required, right? The state is requiring us to do that. So it looks like we're going to be already sort of
I know, I was going to say, you may not be happy with this, that we don't have the rebate program. There are some reasons that I have been concerned about that, but I will say, like, there definitely, we have staff that is very interested in, you know, working this problem. We know it is an issue.
That's on our staff list, is to present some tiered rate structure suggestions, I think.
That's what I'm talking about when I talk about the potential funding that we haven't finalized that budget yet, but it is included to be able to study that this year.
And the tiered rate concept is pretty straightforward. There's obviously a lot of details that go into how you want to organize your blocks, and Utah Waterways can help you with some of that analysis. I wanted to just mention as well with the ordinances, with the toolbox that we've put together on behalf of the council that we'll send to you, really does take a sort of choose your own adventure approach, if you will. So we have for each category within an ordinance, say it's lawns or it's whatever it is that your city might be more concerned about, there's the low, medium, and high approach, and then kind of a draft model ordinance for each of those. So if you wanted to start entering into it at the low level, great. If there's parts of it that you feel like you can step into at the moderate or even high level, that's fantastic. But it's designed so that you can plug in the pieces you feel comfortable with now and not be held up by whatever it is that's sort of slowing you down.
I think, for me personally, some of the concern has just been that we are a more built-out community, so we haven't had incredible growth, and some of the requirements that would have put pressure on, you know, change the ordinances, but then there's the pressure to enforce the ordinance.
Sure.
But you're obviously presenting many other, I like what you said, choose your own adventure. I think I've always felt like rebate program is great, but that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, these things work well together, right? Like the ordinance that's sort of on the stick side, you've got the rebates and the incentives on the carrot side.
Yeah.
And then your tiered rate structure is sort of influencing economic behavior. So they all work together.
I haven't looked at the ordinances in your toolbox, but I had the same reaction as Gina, for what it's worth, that we're a pretty built-out city. So I was thinking, is this, so if you make major improvements to your home, then you have to update your lawn, or are the ordinances geared to say, hi, congratulations, homeowners, you get to go rip out some lawn now?
So you'll see in the appendix, it's pretty long because we broke it out separately for each of those different situations. So if you wanted to just pick out the piece that's more for the built-out communities and leave aside the new development components, you could pick that piece out. So there's different pieces for, yeah, like I said, new development, commercial, some of your public entities. There's a lot that can be done there in a built-out community. So I think you'll see that, pick out the pieces that make sense. There's a lot around irrigation timing, irrigation technology. It's not all about, turf replacement. That's certainly an important piece of it, but you'll see there's, I think, a lot there for all different kinds of communities in the basin. It was designed so that, a fast-growing community can pick out pieces, and then also a built-out community can use the toolbox.
That's where, with us mostly being built out, the passing this ordinance doesn't have a great impact, but a great benefit to our residents who we do need to switch out the turf, or allow them to switch out the turf, because our new development is so small that really the ordinance approving new development has to have these restrictions. Not necessarily a big deal, but if we can get some people and use state money to incentivize them to rip out turf, I think it's just a win situation.
I also appreciate right at the beginning where you're talking about, I have long said that the rebate program is great, but it does not help us to understand statewide and as a region what the conservation goals are. So I really appreciate this presentation and the fact that you're giving us what the diversion conservation goal needs to be and what the depletion.
Yep.
That helps us to look at it as a city and go, okay, yes, Brant is right. We do not have a ton of new development coming, but how can we still contribute
That's right.
to these goals?
And I pulled up the current regional conservation goals for the Weber Basin. By 2030, the goal is 20%. And as you heard in the presentation, they're updating those goals, so those may change a bit.
Okay.
But that's a good sort of, for now, target.
At least
If
it gives
everyone
us
goes-
something to understand what it is that what we're driving for. Just,
Right.
I've worried about, hey, yes, get the rebate program in place, and we feel good.
Right.
But did it really solve the problem? It won't solve the
by
problem.
itself, right? So it's
No.
going to take all the communities and all of these different components of tools, and what we really want is people to get into the game and do what they can to make progress. So we're not looking for an all or nothing approach. We're looking for everyone to step up a bit.
I love it.
Yeah. Any other questions I can answer, or do you want to add anything, Tim?
Let me just say thank you to Centerville City Council, Centerville #1, yay! No, but for seriously taking the time, it really is an important issue. And I think to Gina, to your point, I mean, I evangelize about Great Salt Lake all the time. I think if I had more time, I could probably convince each of you that it's a very important issue because it touches us in so many ways. But I kind of say when it comes to water conservation, you can be agnostic about your motivation. I don't care what your motivation is. In the summer of 2022, Weber Basin Water Conservancy was concerned that they would not have enough drinking water to provide through the end of the summer. And so this starts to become existential. So whether you're worried about birds at Great Salt Lake, or you're worried about dust, and we're right downwind from that, or you're just worried about your children and grandchildren being able to live in Utah and to thrive. It doesn't matter what your motivation is, but we all have to do our part. And to my mind, it's a fundamental change in the way that we manage water. We look like England. We manage our water and our lawns like England. But yet we live in the second driest state in the country. And so how do we affect that change in the way that we do water for all the purposes and all the values that we put on water? And the nice thing about this is it's voluntary, it's getting ahead of the curve, it's trying to meet people where they're at, it's not trying to force solutions on anybody. And so I appreciate SWCA and all the stakeholders you saw that are engaged in this effort to try to deliver tools to cities like Centerville, just to, where do we start? And what can we do that's constructive and that will actually help with these regional scarcity issues? So thanks for your time.
Tim, can I ask you a question? And I want to preface this by saying I'm fully supportive of what you guys are doing, right? Fully supportive. Anecdotally, what I have heard, and I suspect some people may look at this presentation and say, is wait a second, I thought that agriculture was the main water user, right? Why are we jumping through so many hoops? Why are we requiring cities to do all of these things, shouldn't we be looking to the farmers that are farming the alfalfa, right, in the middle of Utah? I'm just curious what you would say to somebody about that. Like, how is this helping? Should we be focusing elsewhere?
And I add just to that a little bit, because the farms are absolutely, but I've also heard a little bit about data centers as well in Salt Lake County and in Utah County. Can you expand on those two?
So I think the best way to think about it, and Erica may have some thoughts as well, is that all of us contribute to water scarcity, all of us, in every different way. So we do in our homes, and interestingly enough, it's not the water that you use inside your home that's typically the problem, because that water can be reused, or it goes to Great Salt Lake, right? It's the water that we use outdoors that's effectively lost to the system. That was that whole idea of sort of depletion that was talking about. That water's gone. It's vapor that drifts off into Colorado or something. And so, you know, we contribute that way. We also contribute because we buy the crops that the farmers grow. We like the steaks that the cows that ate the alfalfa create. We use the data, we use the AI that drives the data centers, which are water-hungry industries. And so I think it's super important that the risk that I see when it comes to Great Salt Lake or water conservation, it's always easy to solve the problem on the backs of someone else. If the farmers just used a different crop, well, farmers are just following market demand for alfalfa because we like to eat beef, right? And so are we going to go in and tell the farmers that they can't choose what's in their economic self-interest? And so are farmers part of this? Do they need to be part of the solution? Absolutely they do. But so do us here in the cities. Farmers, we're doing a lot with farmers. The state's invested, I don't know, $200 million more, like closer to $200 to $300 million in agricultural water optimization to help farmers adopt technologies that use less water. But I will say, you know, when I look at the biggest single waste out there, it's not the grass that we use that's the problem, folks, right? It's the grass that we're not using. And I like to say, if the only reason you step on a piece of grass is to mow it, that's really a luxury that we can't afford in a desert, because that water, all the water that goes to grow it, is effectively wasted and not available for any other use. Agricultural water, they divert a lot, but a lot goes to groundwater, a lot goes back into rivers through what we call return flow. And so when you look at depletions, like who's actually taking the water out of the system that can't be used again, cities, particularly in the valley of the basin of the Great Salt Lake, are a really, really big part of the problem. So.
Yep. And the only thing I'll add is when you go and give a similar presentation, and I promise you these presentations are, and these conversations are being had in the agricultural sector, they ask the same question. Well, what about the cities and what about the industry? So, I mean, the answer is exactly right. Like it's all of us having a piece of it, and it's also sort of that recognition that we all have to step up. Or why would anyone else step up if we're all going to take that position? So that community perspective, I think, is the right way to think of it.
Hear that, Chief? And you stop using water to put out your fires.
Use less water.
That's what I heard.
Let's not stop that particular item.
I mean, Brian, just one quick follow-up on yours. This is something the state has not fully grappled with, right? So for years, we've been incentivizing businesses to come here because we all want the jobs. We haven't done a good job as a state of thinking like, well, what are the ancillary impacts, whether it's to roads and other infrastructure, or particularly to water. So we've incentivized some super water intensive industries to come here, and there's a question, is that the best place for them to be, or should they be somewhere where there's a lot more water?
And the gray water has been somewhat restrictive in the past, right? So use of gray water and how we reuse water. In other states, in Arizona, there was a huge push to use gray water, and because water was so limited in Arizona. In Utah, it's been a little challenging. I think Santa Quinn's done a really good job with their plant they developed. But anyway, there's opportunities there.
For the record, what I'm taking away from that is Tim is telling me that I can take very long showers because all of it just goes back into the
95%.
Not wasteful.
95%.
I'm not polite to say, but we sometimes do say flush twice for Great Salt Lake. The reality is that water does today, most of that water goes to the lake.
Directly. Yep.
But you have to get the water to your house, and that's what Scott Paxman says.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, and they hate
You
that.
still got to get the water to your house, though.
They want it stored upstream so that we can actually have water when we need it, right? And that's where there is an impact there.
Yeah, for sure.
For the record, again, I was kind of playing devil's advocate there, but I've certainly heard that comment, right, before. And so this presentation didn't address that at all, and I think it's helpful to be able to address the the other side of that. Wait a second, why are we doing all this over here? What are they doing?
That's helpful feedback. Maybe we'll add in a slide on what the agricultural sector is doing, because they are also working on this.
Or at least the balanced notion of saying agriculture, we're all in this together, kind of thing.
I also want to add that you might consider adding this. I think I knew this because I studied this in school, but hadn't thought about it in a few years. But Representative Cutler mentioned to me, and he probably got it from you guys, I'm assuming, that no body of salt water, once it starts degrading like this and disappearing, has come back.
It's kind of a sobering thought. Yeah, the big systems, once they get these dynamics, nobody's got there's no great win solution out there. There's some smaller ones where they've had some mixed success, but the big sort of what we call sister lakes, and you look at the costs in human health, in just economic damage and everything else, it's massive. I mean, the places that are left aren't places that people want to live, and that's kind of the sobering reality for us. It's just, I've sort of told people it's like failure is not an option. Now, this is not a next year problem, this is a decadal type thing, but I tend to say, you can worry about housing affordability, you can worry about transportation, you can worry about all these things that we really care about, but if we get this one wrong, all of those things kind of go by the by.
Right, and we tend to be one of the cities that's, I mean, we're not as close to the lake as we used to be, but it's, I mean, our community will definitely be impacted by air quality.
You are very much downwind of a lot of the projected dust, yep.
Yeah, I actually like that concept, and maybe you could hit that even a little harder, this idea, like when we're talking about, hey, we're not just talking with municipalities, we're talking agriculture, we're talking all of these things, because there's no one silver bullet that is going to do it.
Yes.
It really is like all of these tools and everybody taking pieces of this to do it, because if we're relying on one or two cities to make this happen, it will never happen.
No.
It will never happen. It takes all of the cities coming together.
Yep.
Hey, for what it's worth, I can call you afterwards, just in terms of some constructive feedback. I don't know if you guys found it this way. I really like all the information that you have on these PowerPoint presentations. Sometimes it was so much on the PowerPoint while people were also talking that I'm trying to listen and read at the same time, and my brain was having a really hard time connecting all of that. So I was going back and like rereading stuff, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It's fire hose. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, it is.
Trying to condense it down and be respectful of the city council's time.
I agree with you. I found that what helped me, and maybe Jennifer sent us the presentation, so actually while I was listening, I pulled it up so I could see it and kind of flip back and forth a little bit, and so that was super helpful.
It is a lot.
It's a lot, but I mean, it was all really interesting, so I don't think I felt like the way it was presented was really also very helpful, and just.
I'm just wondering if sometimes you could maybe like split the slide. Yeah. Because you can still say the same thing.
Right,
But
tell a better
maybe
story.
spread it across more
Split
slides.
it across more slides to make the slide more simple, so the information is exactly the same. It's just more multiple slides. Because
Easier to
again,
follow.
as soon as that slide comes up, in my view, right, sometimes I stop listening.
You start
Because I
reading.
see all of the
Sure.
stuff on
Yeah.
the slide, and then I'm like, wait, what are they saying? Or when I'm trying to listen, then I'm not like processing all of the slide. And again, constructive feedback.
totally.
I know we're your first.
You're the test
one. There's
pancake, so.
Super
Lots
helpful.
of great information in here.
Thank you. We will take that feedback and make sure it's accommodated for the next one. So I heard, in terms of follow-up, you've got the PowerPoint, you've got the recording, if you want to go back and listen to it again.
Can you get
So
us
we'll
the
make sure to get you
contacts?
the contacts. Is there anything else specifically for Centerville that we could get for you? Help you with? Nope.
On the incentive rebates, you had mentioned the slow the flow, which we don't qualify yet because our ordinances aren't up to snuff. Are there additional incentives and rebates that you guys are aware of outside of that? Or is the expectation that the city will just pony up the money for it?
There's different incentives and rebates. The landscape rebate program you don't qualify for right now. Shelby was talking about some other programs that are city-specific, that are specific to municipalities. So you might want to talk with Water.
And we do qualify for all the others.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's just that one.
Yeah, I think
Just the one
it's
we don't.
just the one where you require new development to have a more water-wise landscaping plan.
Got it, okay.
I will say, just predicting, it's water scarcity, right? So You can expect more programs. You can expect over time probably richer incentives and things like that. It's just going to happen. All of these, the law that you see the policymakers sort of trying to get people prepared for the idea of, you know, tiered rates on secondary. We've never had tiered rates on secondary. But that's part of fairness, and it's also part of water conservation.
The worry is it's incentive today, but if we don't do anything, it's going to become regulatory later, which is what Las Vegas is dealing with. So if we don't participate now, it's going to be forced upon us.
Brent, that's a great perspective, and it's absolutely right. Somebody's going to come and solve it for us if we don't figure out a way to solve it ourselves.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yep, thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is also a presentation, but Brent, our accountant mayor is not here, our finance, I love finance myself too, but did mayor want this one to be postponed to present, or do you want me to go ahead?
No, you can go ahead. He might walk in actually here shortly.
Okay, good.
Text me saying he just got to his home, but
awesome.
You're
Perfect.
welcome to present it.
Okay. Well, this one is fantastic. We, I think, have all talked about how great our staff is. In particularly, this is a recognition of our finance department. Nate, are you going to come up here? Are you going to enjoy yourself back here? There, I'm not sure. Do we? I don't know if we have anything printed off, but there is a certificate in our packet and a letter from the Government Finance Officers Association, which has awarded our finance department with a certificate of achievement and excellence in financial reporting. So thank you, Nate. Thank you to all your staff too, because I know it's not just you. You do have a great staff yourself as well. And I think it goes to kind of all staff. We've talked about this before, reporting back up and making sure that certain expenditures or revenues are reported correctly. But thank you so much. No, thank you. Anything else anybody wants to add? Yeah, just a little.
Nate loves the attention. I don't know if you see this.
Oh,
yeah,
I know. He
exactly.
really gets excited about that. I think he had a speech prepared.
Bryce, if that could go out on socials, that'd be fantastic too.
Oh, I love that idea.
I do too.
Yeah.
Here comes his speech. It's 15 minutes now.
I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of our staff, but especially the finance department. We have a great staff, and they are excellent, and they try to do their best in everything they do, whether it's financial reporting or utility billing or anything in between. So anyway, we do have a great staff, and all the credit goes to them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bryce, like some kind of just blip that you can think of some, just a few sentences that kind of copy paste-ish.
Give me permission, I'll just give a big picture of Nate's face.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll love that one.
Sure, it's as red as possible.
Okay, let's move on to business items. Thanks, Chief Stewart, for being so patient with us. So our first item on the agenda is our fireworks restrictions area and our annual update. So we'll hand it over to Chief.
Thank you, council, staff, good evening. And thanks to SWCA Group for that nice segue into concerns in the West, drought, water, and now we'll talk about fire. So I'm here just to represent the fire district and just ask for your annual support of maintaining the fireworks restrictions on the East Bench. Just to give you kind of an idea of where we are with fire in this area, or fire in Utah anyway. In 2024, Utah saw 544 human-caused wildfires out of 961 of those fires. These fires burned approximately 25,422 acres. We lost 74 homes in Utah in 2024. And so far this year, we're at 62 human-caused out of 68 wildfires in Utah already. So it's kind of weird to talk about wildfire and fire concerns since we've had such an interesting wet spring. But what you really need to be concerned about is all that rapid explosion of light fuel growth that's on our East Bench. It will just, as soon as the yellow sun comes out, it'll dry out very quickly and become high risk for us. So on page 123, you can see the submittal that I sent to Brant, just with our recommendation that we keep the fireworks prohibited on the East Bench. this year. It's the same restrictions that we've had. There's no change. From what I could see, there's no change since 2018 in that ordinance or that map. So just that's why I'm here tonight, just to request that we maintain those, and then to just answer any questions that you may have about wildfire or the fire department or anything.
I know we've asked this in the past, but I think given the Palisades and Eaton, all the fires in Southern California, was there any discussion about how that might impact us if we had a downslope wind? Typically that is associated with the low pressure that's already gone through, and so it's a different type of event than the Santa Ana winds.
Yeah, it's very similar, right? We can have the very similar conditions that they have in Southern California. It just hasn't happened here yet. And I say it hasn't happened here yet, but Gun Range Fire was a perfect example. And I was the incident commander of that fire, and we were losing homes. And it was the first wildfire in the department's history that we were losing homes under my watch. And I took that very personally, that was happening. So what we've talked about since the LA and fires this spring is what we can do as a department. A lot of work we've been training heavily this spring to maintain our certifications and to get more experience with our local fire warden. August Foreman is his name. You've seen him around. He wears the short pants and the beard. He's a character. But we've been working with him as far as training and maintaining certifications, and looking forward to the possibility that we could deploy resources this summer and what that would look like for the department. Not only to gain experience, but it's also, frankly, a revenue source for the district. So that would be a nice little addition, as well as bringing that experience back to this community to help our community wildfire situation. The other thing we plan on doing this year is really keeping an eye on those wind events and maybe staffing up on those red flag warning condition days, or pre-positioning resources that we could have a few extra trucks that are available for high-risk days like that. Yeah.
So, and my observation on the map that's shown is once you get down to 200 north, it carves up from 400 east to 600 east, and then upwards to 700 east. And that window between the bench, kind of not necessarily, partly our city line, because the V area hillside is a little deceiving because that doesn't recognize where homes are actually at. That window gets tight, and so that was the context for my question is I think we've asked that before, is why haven't we brought that down to 600 or even 400 from 200 north on down?
Yeah, and we could sure address that in the future. I assume that will be addressed with with legislation that's come into effect. There was House Bill 48. I don't know if anybody followed this, but we are following it very closely. That establishes the wildland-urban interface boundary, as well as it establishes a structure protection score, and homes will be assessed a fee or a fine due to their square footage based on where they are in that urban interface. And the state's, putting that into effect starting in January, but we're working right now to see what does that mean for us. Right now, it doesn't mean anything for us. The lion's share of the work falls on the county to do site assessments and to recommend what people can do for mitigation efforts. Now, they don't have the resources. They're not here to defend themselves, but they don't have the resources. So I think it's going to fall on the district to do some of that work. And frankly, we don't have the resources either, but we're going to do what we can to help people out that way and come up with fuel projects that they can do on their own property to help their score. There's a lot of work sessions that still have to be done. The state rule goes into effect for that bill in November, or they're writing the rule for public comment in November, I should say. So there will be a lot of more work in the next few months to play into that bill. But basically what's going to happen is they're going to create a risk map, and it's going to come down in those areas. And I think that we could just adopt, whatever section of the risk map and say that's our fireworks restriction, because it's a state map. We can easily justify the boundaries on that map due to their risk. So I think that it will be addressed in the future.
Any other questions for Chief? Okay, we do have, I believe, a recommendation. Do we need to do anything from a recommendation standpoint, Lisa, or we just?
No, this is just justifying, we have to establish 2 out of the last 5 years, but we just do it annually so that, you know, we can establish that, so. The chief for providing that letter.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for all you do.
Thank you,
Guys
appreciate
doing a
that.
great job.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the fraud risk assessment, and who's taking that one up, Brent?
Nate?
Nate is on his way up.
Okay.
All right, good evening, council. As was mentioned, tonight we have the presentation of the fraud risk assessment. We've been doing this for probably about 5 or 6 years now. It's a requirement from the state auditor's office that we fill this out each year and present it to the council each year as well. So you can see the actual assessment there in your packet. We go through and answer their questions, and we're given a point value based on if we're able to answer each question. So the total amount of points that we've received is 375 out of the possible 395, which puts us in the very low risk category. We received the same amount of points as we have in years past, with the one item that we did not receive points for was for the internal audit function, which we don't have, which is common for being a city of our size. So yeah, that is our fraud risk assessment. Are there any questions?
What are our mitigating controls on the receivables and payments, numbers 2 and 3? How do we handle those?
Yeah, so number 2 is asking if people are able to receive cash or check are different from those who are able to make general ledger entries. Again, being small staff, we don't have that complete separation, but we do have a journal entry approval process, as well as a cash receipting daily reconciliation and a monthly reconciliation. So I'm able to see every journal entry that gets made and verify that it was correct and make sure that it has the appropriate backup and supporting documents. And then similar answer to number 3 about the customer's accounts. We go through we have a form that anytime there's an adjustment, they give the reasoning for the adjustment to the customer's account, and then it gets signed by the second person to verify that it's a necessary and correct adjustment.
Okay, any other questions for Nate?
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, are you gonna stay up here?
I'll stay up here.
Okay, next one on our agenda is budget. So we put this one back on our agenda from last 2 weeks ago when we had our power outage. Probably wanted to chat more and didn't have the opportunity. So this is back up here, and Brant, I don't know if you want to lead out with anything. You've left a few things on our work areas here for us. I think I'll just kind of turn over to you and Nate, or are you wanting this to be more of our time at our request?
Yeah, so the intent of this is just continuation of the tentative budget
Okay.
has been presented, so this is your opportunity as a council to discuss what you'd like to see in the final budget. So ultimately, here as staff, we're here to answer your questions, clarify, but ultimately as a council, you kind of decide what you would like the final budget to
And
look
Nate,
like.
as we discuss that, remind us our timelines by statute when we have to have our final budget approved.
Yeah, so the tentative budget was adopted at the prior city council meeting, so it is available on our website, as well as a physical copy here. The first meeting in June, we will hold another public hearing and consider the adoption of the final budget. We have generally tabled that, the first meeting, and pushed it off to the second meeting in June. We just have to make sure it's adopted by the end of June. And we generally table it both to consider public feedback, as well as we generally don't have the tax rate from the county at that point.
Yeah, so this will be on our agenda for probably 4 council meetings in a row. So public has a lot of notice on our budget approval process. Okay. Okay. Has anybody been stewing on budget
Every day.
modifications or suggestions?
I do, going back to our proposed code enforcer, I have concerns. We've talked about creating the job description and using the money as a placeholder, and I just feel that it wouldn't be prudent to fund something we don't have an actual job description for. So I think that it would be, if that's something that we would want to look at as a council and fund, it would be best to create the position or at least define the position before we fund the position. And that would be my thought.
If it were to be defined, do you feel like that then merits it? Or you're saying I gotta see it before?
Oh, I would absolutely want to see something before I fund something.
I'm just trying to get a feel for what.
Because I ultimately, I don't feel like a code enforcement officer is proper for Centerville at this time when we have a staff that could possibly perform some of those duties, i.e. The first steps of code enforcement would be to have outreach through either email or mail, and I think that we could facilitate that with the staff we have on hand. So that, for me, is a big stumbling block.
Brent, question for you.
Yes.
If we set aside some funds for a code enforcement officer, we look at it, we decide that we don't need one, what happens to those funds?
They don't get used, so we wouldn't use them, and they would just go back into the general fund or at the end of the year.
So given that, my view is, I mean, if we don't fund it, it absolutely will not happen. If we set aside some money for it, it may or may not happen. It may not happen, but at least if we set aside the money, it gives us the opportunity to look at that position a little bit more carefully to put in place this year. To me, it doesn't feel like, based on what Brent has said, that's a big hit, right? To me, it just feels like a placeholder. So I'm supportive of it.
I was also thinking about the COLA. Gina had mentioned it last time, or maybe you mentioned the merit pay. I've been thinking a lot about that.
I did more, it was the merit, it was not.
And I would recommend eliminating the merit and moving the COLA up to 4%.
Why?
Yeah, can you?
Well, because then everybody would get the increase at the same rate.
Regardless of merit?
Regardless.
So we're going to incentivize and reward employees who have worked not as hard, the same as employees who have worked harder, without the ability to distinguish?
Correct.
I will tell you, after talking to several of our department heads, they are very, very in favor of the merit. I've asked them if they're just giving everybody the 2%. They said no, that they do use it. And sometimes they actually hold it and will say, you know, you're not going to get it now, but if you improve to here in 6 months or in 3 months, or when you meet these steps, you can get it. They do really feel like they use it to improve their employees. So I've had some companies say that's very important. Even after Gina's thing last time, somewhere they're like, it's pretty hard to say, well, I'm only going to give you a 0.5% increase and I'll give you another half. They like being able to give 1%, and they like to be able to give 3% to somebody who's really worked for it. So they feel like they're using that to their advantage of being a manager to get the best out of their people.
And what that concerns me is that we don't have a standardized metric for that particular evaluation. Is that correct? We don't have
We
Each
discussed, Brett
department
discussed
does
last
not
time that he
have-
has an evaluation report for each department. So there
Say
is
again?
procedure in place.
Say, I didn't, you cut me off. I didn't hear what you said.
In last meeting, Brant explained that there is a evaluation process already in place. So there is a process whereby.
Process. We need a standardized.
So what we don't have is what you're looking for, is there's not an objective, like a 1 through 5 rating. And evidence has shown in the research and in the attendance I have at HR meetings that the 1 through 5 is not necessarily a thing that's effective anymore, because everybody gets 3 to 5 or 4 to 5. I guess you're the expert.
Great inflation.
Councilmember Heyman, so I may have said it, but everything I've attended, there's this moving away from that objective standard, because that it's still subjective in its objective intent. And so that we don't necessarily have an objective 1 through 5, you're meeting these expectations. What we're looking at doing is creating an annual expectation that all departments have to fill out as a department that I need in their files. What they do independently, like police has their process, Public Works has theirs, it's different. They're allowed to have that process, but I need a standardized way for the city, but I'm still not going to promote this 1 through 5 meet, exceed expectations. Not yet. I mean,
What are you looking for, you know, when, I guess Spencer talks about the procedure that you have in place. Can you give me an example of like kind of how that looks now?
yeah, so currently department heads will do their evaluations. I see the evaluations, how they're doing it. It's all different how they do it. So Mike will meet, do the evaluations, 30-page long evaluations per employee. I'm just kidding, Mike. But they are definitely intense, right? They definitely go into a lot of detail, what they're doing well and what they're falling short. And then when you get the personal action form, it states in the description, look, I'm giving this employee this much because of these reasons. And so it's documented on why they're getting that increase, and there might be in there, they have some work to do, they're getting 1% now. If they meet certain criteria expectations, they'll get the other 1% later. So that's what's in the personnel action form, and that's what I see.
Is there enough, do you feel like there's enough, I guess my question, based on, you know, Brian's asking for something standardized, is anyone surprised when they get to their, I mean, I'm assuming Mike is having some kind of meeting or some kind of discussion with said employee so they understand what they're getting and why. Is there any surprise to them as they approach that, or are they like completely lambasted and going, oh, I didn't do well, or is that being talked
So
about?
generally, I will say not every time, but in most cases, the department head will have met with the employee prior to the raises going out. So it's not, they see it and think, oh my gosh, why didn't I get it? Or so generally, they have met with their employees prior to July 1.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I've seen in situations where you don't allow for merit-based increases, where everyone receives the same increase regardless of performance, it can really hurt morale. And it drives down performance, because if I know that I'm gonna get the same raise as this person over here, why am I working hard, right? It almost pushes down performance, because people are like, lowest common denominator, all I have to do is bare minimum, and I'm gonna get the same raise as the person next to me. And it can also be a real morale killer for the people who are killing it, who are working really hard, that go, well, that kind of sucks, because I'm over here working really hard, and that person that's barely doing minimum, right? They're meeting goals, but they're not working as hard as me. They're getting the same reward that I do. And so I think that merit-based pay, it really allows for you to reward the employees who are excelling, and it helps keep morale up, and it incentivizes employees to improve rather than pushing them the other direction. My question for you is, will you remind me how much is the merit-based pay increase total in our proposed budget?
Like the nominal number?
Yeah, the actual number.
69,000?
69,000.
69,000.
Well, that was, that's for 1%, so times 2.
Okay.
I was gonna say, last time you were telling, I just wanted to make sure we were, that's your number.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the 138. That's essentially equivalent to the personnel contingency number.
So this process only works, to your comment, is if the department heads actually have the difficult conversations, right? It's really contingent upon them having that tough conversation and saying, look, you are struggling here, and we got to work on it. But it's got to come from a place that we want you to do well. and not from a place to try and fire you, right? That's
And that
what I've
sounds
always.
consistent with what Robin's feedback.
Yeah, so the argument is always that this is to have the tough conversation, but give them constructive feedback on where they need to improve. So this only works if department heads are having those tough conversations, which our departments are having those conversations.
I was gonna say, our departments are, and as you know, that Robin can be kind of nosy sometimes. And so, because I have looked into this and I have talked kind of extensively to some of the department heads, or probably all of the department heads, to see how this worked, because I was a little concerned about it. And I felt like they all felt like it was a good tool in their toolbox to get the best out of their people and to give them a little bit more, I don't want to say control, but, now they say you can't control your kids because you can't do anything, and that's kind of, they have something to be able to incentivize. I will also say, after being on for a long time, Brant will know that I came to him in my angry mode a few times and said, you need to be careful with what you bring us raise-wise. Come in low, and if we want to go higher, we will. Because there was one year that I felt like they came in high. I seen what it did to the morale after it got out there. There's a lot of people, most everybody in this room, it's probably not going to affect their lives if we give them 1% or 3%. But there are some people that it makes a huge difference whether they can buy a car or whether they can afford to get braces on there. So they come home to their wife and they say, hey, this is what I think we're going to get this year. And then we cut it back and we kill morale. So I say that we really encourage staff to come in low and then let us talk about it so that we don't, you'd be surprised, staff is watching our city council meetings. We are in the lunchroom. As boring as we are, they are being watched. When I was first put on council, I won't tell you who it was Randy Randall called me and said, be careful what you say in council because you are being watched. Don't say anything you wouldn't say if all of my men weren't watching you. And so I learned that, but I do think that as far as we are in the budget right now, I would be concerned to cut it back because I think there are people, they shouldn't be planning on it, but they are. And if we affect our morale and it affects our productivity in any way, we've shot ourselves in the foot. We save a little bit, but we lose way more in productivity. So I think as a council, if we want to say to Brant, next time come in a little bit lower, but I think I'm okay with that. I think we need to say to staff, be careful what you come in with, or talk to, kind of get the feeling of where your council is so that you know where to come in. But I would be worried now watching our staff for 9 years of what we could do to them if we lower what we have already.
So then maybe we have a tentative budget then? Seriously.
It is a tentative budget, but
I know,
it is their
then
lives.
If we can't take anything out of the tentative budget, then we should
I
just
think
have
we can-
a final budget.
I think we can take a lot out of the tentative budget. I think we can
Let's
take
do
out
it.
the code enforcement. We took out the janitor for the building. There's a lot we
In the
can.
tentative budget, though. The janitor wasn't in the tentative budget.
Oh, that's true, but I don't want to ruin our productivity with
So
our
they're gonna,
staff.
so our staff is going to revolt because we take away 0.5% or 1%?
I don't
Is
think
that
they're
what
gonna-
we're seeing, what you're saying?
I don't think they're going to revolt, but I think you might see I don't want to say depression. I don't know what the right word is.
Well, I do
believe it.
totally get what you're saying, because I worked for the state, and we got to watch the legislature go up and down, and in the last minute totally cut a merit increase. So I get what you're saying. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a reason at this point to say right or wrong, rather, I don't think we can set that is a policy I'm not willing to go for, but let me ask you, Brian. When I asked that question last week or 2 weeks ago, it was more to find out, like, hey, what does that mean? I'm looking for, some extra dollars to save. And we're talking about, Brant told me $69,000. Well, $69,000, I'm more going, hey, it does affect morale, and how do you, is it worth it to pull $69,000? And I'm not sure that's actually what you're saying, because you were kind of more talking about merit versus COLA type of thing.
But see, and I absolutely want to make sure staff knows that we do appreciate them. And people that work in government have an understanding, though, of where the money comes from. From personal
Right, you know,
experience,
yeah.
we know where this comes from. And if budgets are constrained, then people will, pull themselves up by their bootstraps and do what they need to do. I believe that, the COLA is important to keep people apace, keep them apace with the economy that's going on right now. And what we could do is provide the same amount of money. Let's look at the 2% and the 2.5%. Can we look at providing 0.5% at the end of the year as COLA? Is that,
Wait.
is that across the, I'm just proposing things out there,
Well, I'm
but,
just trying to understand it. When you say 0.5% at the end of the year, what are you saying?
well, that, of COLA. So you provide the 4% up front, say everybody gets this 4% COLA, and then at the end of the year, provide 0.5% of, if we want to label it merit, so be it, but have that distributed at the end of the year.
But I think the merit, if I'm understanding correctly, Brant, the merit is kind of, it's a reward for the previous year's work.
Oh, yeah, so, yeah,
I mean,
recognizing.
when we're talking about, I mean, Mike keeps getting to be the example, but when he goes and analyzes and talks with his employees before July 1st, they're analyzing fiscal year 2025, right? And so that merit is coming because of the work from the previous year. It's just being paid over time instead of a lump sum.
Right.
I mean, I'm just trying to say, is that, am I understanding?
Well, even
it?
inflation is behind. We're looking at inflation in the past. We've already been hit with the inflation, but we're already behind. So when we give COLA, we're actually already a year behind. Well, a year and a half, because we're due it in July. So 2 comments. So Councilmember Plummer, to your 4%, that would definitely be the easy way. That would be the easiest way to just say, you get this 4%. It would save a lot of headache and time. But that kind of gets into the step-in grade position where I'm not a big fan if you get these automatic increases because you've been with this city. And I want to be careful of that because when employees do get these automatic increases, productivity does shift. And there hasn't been a demand here or an expectation to move to a step-in grade system. But I do have some reservations about a step-in grade because you lose some of that tough conversations to promote performance. So that's my hesitation. I'm not saying it would be easy. If we went that route, it would be the easiest thing ever. But I'd rather have the hard conversations to set expectations.
And we could, but we've also talked about having a study done on these, on salaries and pay. So we could actually withhold that merit, provide the 4%, and then have the study, and then determine where we are at.
I would prefer the route, and this is not a bad suggestion, but I'd prefer the route we go with this and we have the study because the study takes time and it's implemented next fiscal year. So we're not messing with the budget mid-year on what it may or may not do because that could be hard to budget for. So as we do potentially when we don't have it in the budget, so this is going to be a separate conversation if we are going to do it. We weren't sure if we're going to do it this next budget year, but we'll have a conversation maybe a few months down the road, say, okay, we maybe need to do it, but we're only going to implement it next fiscal year. It wouldn't be this fiscal year.
Correct, and I would
So,
agree with that.
and the other thing that, just keep in mind how this process, what I have presented this year, and so the tentative budget is my budget to you saying, here's what I see the needs of the city. So this is my opportunity to say, from an administrative standpoint, here's what you need to all consider. You do have the policy decision to decide whether or not that fits into what the policy says. But this is my budget to you. I mean, it's our budget, really, but as the budget officer, I'm the one stamping this saying my recommendations are this. So my budget has not shifted in the 6 budgets I've prepared for Centerville. Let me back that up. In the 10 years I've presented budgets, this is the process that I've elected to take, and that is COLA plus 2%. It's the expectation that council, you know that's what I'm going to present, right, Councilmember Meekum? You all know that's what I'm going to present?
Because we have to, like I said, the first 1 year he came in.
But that's what COLA was. COLA was 7.1% that
We had a
because of
pretty
inflation.
strong
It was
discussion
crazy.
that year.
So staff all knows what I'm presenting. So what I'm presenting is not a surprise to any of you, right? Here's how the process was
You're
done.
right, it's not a surprise.
So here's how the process was done prior to my arrival, and is that the city was separated into quartiles. You had your first quartile for your new employees, then second and third and fourth, and your fourth quartile is genuinely your long tenured employees. The first quartile received, I'm gonna have to, 4%, and the last quartile was 0.5%. So your department heads are making this, while your frontline employees are making this. So we created this huge compression issue, right, Councilmember Meekum? So we were on council, our department heads were underpaid by $20,000 a year, based on comparing against their counterparts in the cities we selected.
And we did a big study right before Brant came.
Yeah, and I had to implement it. That was
we
a lot
were
of fun.
in real trouble because we were in real trouble.
So ultimately, that system, as much as you're rewarding your frontline employees to get them to stay, you're creating a compression issue, and you're not rewarding that loyalty and the experience and knowledge that they've gained over the time. So with the process I'm doing, yes, it's the same, but you're not having the compression issue. It is a little bit more costly because now your high earners are getting that 2% and not 0.5%, and so that does cost the city, but you're staying competitive. Because if we lost Corey Snyder, Mike Eggett is more expensive than Corey Snyder was. Just not throwing you under the bus, but that's how it is. Mike is more expensive than Randy was.
That is how it is right now in the industry.
That's how it is.
Across the board.
So if we lose somebody, we are paying more for that person than.
That is not just in the public.
No,
that
that's-
is 100% in the private sphere. We're seeing it. Employers who lose employees, the cost of having to go out and find somebody else and train them, and they are always coming in at a higher cost. I mean, that's a trend that we're seeing.
So with my COLA, the proposed COLA, I keep saying mine, I'm sorry, 2.5% COLA, I also shift the pay scale with that 2.5%, so the pay scale doesn't fall behind. So the hope is when we do a compensation study, we've stayed somewhat in line with the market. So we do a comp study, we're not trying to find $200,000 to bring everybody up.
We've stayed in that 60%.
We've stayed in the 60, so we're maybe finding 30, 40, and making some small adjustments.
So Spencer brought this up.
That's why I proposed.
Are we in the 60%, do you feel like?
We're pretty darn close. Yeah, so I mean, Jacob did our study a couple of years ago. That was very helpful, where we saw that we had a number of employees that were below. Police was in the 80, 90. That might have shifted over time because as these other police departments are continuing to leapfrog each other, create some challenges. I think generally we're at 60%. Some areas might be 70 or 80. I don't think we have anybody in the 50, but I need a comp study to look at that, so.
Spencer, I think we've heard from everybody on council except you. How are you feeling about the merit? I'm just going to put you on the spot. How are you feeling about the merit increase for staff?
I support of the 2.5 and the 2% variability for actual performance. I think it's not on principle a good and data driven. I mean, the evidence shows that it's not a wise choice to just set a set fee with a smaller merit. So I'm very supportive of the 2.5 and 2.
Yeah,
Well,
me
and
too,
I will
for
say
what it's
we're
worth.
in line. So I'm looking up Farmington's right now in their tentative budget, a 5% combination of cost of living increase and merit.
So
all
they're probably
full-
2.5 plus 2.5.
All full-time employees and elected officials excluding the PD officers. PDs do this, they have a
So their
step
council
grade.
members got an increase.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ooh, in Farmington, I was talking to a Farmington council member. They make a lot more than we do.
We have
actually, Brent was actually encouraged that. We always told him no.
I'm not suggesting that we.
No, I know you're not.
Your job is so hard, and that's why I proposed it, but I get it. But again, if you want to implement it for 4 years from now, it doesn't have to impact you. But anyway, it's a hard job, and you should be rewarded, so.
I think, I mean, I'm the one that brought up the merit and maybe adjusting it. I wasn't necessarily saying that was something we should do. What I did is I took,
You were trying to find out how much, to your point, how much does it calculate to be?
how much is it costing the community? Because it is an increase in the cost of the budget, and I looked at everything that was an increase in the cost of the budget. And what I wanted to know from Brant, he answered, which was, it's, 1% is 69,000, which told me that 2% is 140,000. And I feel like after having, and part of that was because I was like, hey, we're having a fund balance transfer of 500,000 additional dollars this year than we normally have. The other educational part of that was Brant was able to point out to me that we have capital fund expenditures that are that much more money. And so I don't, we're always gonna be super tight on every line item budget, but what this told me was that I'm comfortable with what staff recommended, and also I'm comfortable with it in the fact that I do think merit is super important in performance. I agree that I would rather see a merit and a COLA than see just a COLA. And I think they've earned it in the previous year. They've earned it in fiscal year 2025. So I don't want to wait till the end of fiscal year 2026 for them to get that, because they earned it in 2025. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on that. I do think that the capital fund expenditures that we have are critical and needed this year. I see that we have a little thing on training, which I appreciate, Brant. I'm going to reserve the right to review this and then ask questions about it next time, just because I didn't see this in our packet. Did we just get this tonight?
Just got it right now. I just finished it today. So
It's possible I missed it because it came in after, or I just missed it.
Please don't question too much of the formatting and some of those issues.
No problem there.
But ultimately, there are two funds that more than likely I will reduce on my own prior to the presentation of the final budget, just looking at these numbers, so.
Do you have a swag, a range, not to pin you down, do you have a range, not a number, a range that you think that might be, Brent?
So the administration will be dropped 5,000 on that summary page, you'll see that. And then I need to get with Mike, the drainage fund potentially could come down $4,000. Those are the only two really that seem that there is a lot of wiggle room. I don't.
4,000 to 9,000.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. I think that's another item that I had brought up while we were all sitting in the dark.
Yeah. The exercise was great to go through and have the conversations, and like I said, it was helpful to see, again, just getting good sense for me, everything that we are attending as well, so it was helpful.
To Gina's
Great training,
point about capital, the one thing that I am always concerned about is there's a difference between fiscal responsibility in my mind and just being fiscally tight. And in too many cases, we've seen, either as members of council or as participants in a business or from a federal level, kicking the can down the road. And we've got a lot of projects. We have a fire rate increase. We have the COLA that we're talking about. I believe that it is fiscally responsible to at least try to do a small incremental property tax increase so that you continue to replenish. Well, you're actually not going to replenish it, to be honest, because a 2.5% property tax increase is equal to $56,890. I mean, it's a very small drop in the bucket, but it's a recognition that we need to be recognizing inflationary pressures generally. I mean, that's 2.5% of our property tax, not 2.5% of our overall revenue or expenditure budget. So in looking out to the future, I mean, Public Works was gracious enough, or at least recognized that we got a 10-wheel body plow and equipment that's going to be $402,000 next year that we've got to think about into the future. That's going to be a big capital expense. And so I'm supportive of adjusting the budget to be recognizing that we need to be continuing to keep that, let's call it our savings account, at least replenished in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, that is a discussion point that I think needs to be discussed as well, is do we want to try and have a policy similar to what we've done kind of with the water rate, which is these smaller incremental increases that maybe help just, instead of doing, we go up and then it starts immediately falling down.
I'd rather help our fixed income residents know that instead of a 40% increase.
Yeah, instead of a shocking amount.
Yeah, it's just 2.5%. They got a 2.5% on their COLA for a fixed, a social security income or otherwise. It makes reasonable sense that we're 2.5% only on our property tax, again, which is not even close to 2.5% of our overall expenditure increases. The pipe costs more, personnel costs more, asphalt costs more, everything continues to go up.
Yeah,
So.
that's true. I'd be curious to know what Shaylin and Brian,
Yeah,
how they feel about that.
I'd be curious to know what would 2.5% property tax hike be on an average home?
What was that? The
6,000 homes. What did you say, 59,000?
No, 56,890 is that dollar.
Yeah, do the math for me, because I'm an
I
English
will.
major, not a math major.
56,890 divided by 6,000 homes-ish. I mean, obviously, it's 950 a year, 948.
Oh, okay.
$9.48.
So it's less than $1 a month, but it does sort of keep us more level instead of doing this, like this really jerky, like, oh, we shoot up and then adjust. But I'm curious, how does a truth and taxation hearing affect staff, the county? What goes into that? Like, is there extra expense involved with doing a truth and taxation hearing?
There is some, noticing requirements alone, you're looking at $900 to $1,000.
Okay.
You have to post it in the newspaper. And then it depends on if other entities in the county are also going through the truth and taxation process. If they are, then we can piggyback on the county in sending out all the tax notices. If we're the only one, then we get responsible for it. I'm assuming there will be others in the county.
Yeah, how would we
So-
find that out?
There will be, on your boards, I don't know if mosquito abatement's going to do based off of supply increases. I know that
We
the
are
rec,
not.
I don't
I know
think
the
the
rec
sewer
center,
district
Not
the
is.
rec center will do one most likely.
Sewer district's not.
We've already started discussions about that. My guess is school district is always, they've taken that approach, the school district has, is to do kind of annual.
They tend to do a more, like, it's just gonna happen every year. Is that?
We might do one.
I can call the county
Maybe. I
and
don't know if
ask.
it's this year or next year. I'm gonna have to look back at notes.
They may not know yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of agencies are in our same position.
You're being very quiet.
Well, I'm sure we can always discuss tax increases and maintaining some sort of gradual increase with inflation makes sense as opposed to the jerkiness of just allowing it to lapse over time. But again, as I stated in the last meeting in my open session, I believe that if we are going to even entertain something like that, we would need to make sure that there are some things that we can cut out of the budget. And the tentative budget, as it stands, with having another person or a placeholder, even for a placeholder of that a position, when we have the staff available for that particular job, doesn't make any sense. And also, we have increased other fees in the last couple of years. I would be I know that we need to be cognizant of how we've affected people's already, especially our commercial people that work and live here in the city. So I'm willing to talk about things like tax increases, but I really feel like to actually say, let's do this we need to have said, we have looked at the whole budget, we have cut out anything that would say that we're spending where we don't need to be spending.
Okay, so let me ask you this, just in trying to understand all of that. I mean, I don't know if you would view this way or not, but let's go back, let's talk about the medical insurance. They've gone in and refined that, and that has reduced the potential budget because of that. There is some liability to that in the fact that should we have an employee that suddenly does need insurance that did not and qualifies because of a life-changing event, or they quit and someone else comes in that needs it. Yeah, I mean, there's some liability to that, but I added those costs up, and it's pretty significant. It was over 200,000 that we haven't been spending, right? Like, I mean, I think Brant looked at this carefully. So I guess I'm asking you, does that in your mind help with that?
That absolutely does help, but again, we've added things that we don't need.
Okay, let's have a discussion.
The code enforcer, we get the code enforcer.
Yeah, so let me just respond on the code enforcement. Okay. You continue to say we don't need it, yet staff and prior staff have never been able to address code enforcement like this council has wanted them to. Existing staff is saying, we're burdened already. So it's really either you trust staff or you don't. Either you trust staff that say, look, we're trying to deal with development applications, processing those. We are trying to also do economic development to actually help increase revenue sources. We're trying to do all these other things. We don't have time to effectively deal with code enforcement. Can we kind of do it limping along? Sure, but is that what we want in our city? And many of the complaints that we get are code enforcement complaints, and that's why this has come up.
I don't get any code enforcement complaints, but that being said, I hear that a lot of you have. But again, I don't think that we have, and you know what? I don't think it is a black and white, I either trust them or I don't. I don't think that's a fair characterization. Okay? So we have staff, we have people that have filled those positions that have the job description in there that says they're able to do code enforcement. We have that. Why are we trying to spend money on something that we don't need? And that is my thought.
Okay. So as far as the code enforcement goes, you mentioned earlier, hey, it's just an email that we're starting with, right?
Yeah, right.
So Brant and or Lisa, let me ask you this. When it gets to a code enforcement action, what kind of documentation do you legally have to have? I guess that's my concern, is that we understand fully, because I don't think we've done code enforcement probably in the way that we need to in all cases. I dealt with a code enforcement issue several months ago, and it seemed like the documentation and trying to educate that person that was in violation was very time consuming. Even just for me was very time consuming. Let alone, I mean, I was just dealing with the complaining. I wasn't dealing with actually documenting it, so can you guys help me understand?
I mean, I think about all the time I spent on Wholesome Code just as a council member.
All right.
I'm going to defer to Mike, just so he can help you understand the processes.
Okay.
Whether he's here or even in Riverdale, where also code enforcement is happening,
So, when it's staff driven, like somebody like me, that it isn't my full-time job, obviously it's complaint driven. And when I say complaint, they have to formally fill out that form on the website. That's the biggest key, is I get calls throughout the day and they'll say, my neighbor has an issue, I don't like it, there's a bunch of grass, and I'll say, well, in order to validate the concern, because we're report oriented, you need to fill out a form. I'll often get a resident that will say, Well, I don't want to do that. That makes me uncomfortable. Maybe I'll think about
I
it.
don't want to put my name associated
Yeah.
with that.
That's the first thing I often hear, which is really interesting. But then I do eventually get them, right? So when they come in, I get them on my desk, I'll process them. We actually have an investigation form that I fill out. So I'll screen the information that's been filled out, I'll fill out the investigation form. And then I'll actually go and I'll look at the property and evaluate if there are issues. And I take pictures, and I take the pictures back, I put them in the file in the folder. If it's validated, I'll note that a letter needs to be sent out to the property owner, the complaint property that's having the issue. Then I'll prepare a letter using a form letter that we have. I'll fill in the checks, obviously, where the issues are, and then identify that they have 10 days to resolve their issue. At which point then I put the date on what the 10-day notice is on the complaint investigation form that I track. And then obviously I keep a monitor of it. I have a log, which you've seen, that gets emailed to you that shows what the active cases are. They're numbered for each year. And probably before me, they had those as well. So those I think they get emailed to you quarterly. I don't know if you remember seeing them, but they do get emailed to you anyway. I think Donna adds it to a council report that she sends to you quarterly. But anyway, and then obviously I'll follow that on my calendar, go back to the property, check it, verify it. Like today I did 3 checks of complaint issues. 1 was resolved, 2 are unresolved. So I'm probably going to extend grace to those 2 property owners. What I've seen historically is usually 5 to 7 days grace, in some cases up to 10 if the property owner talks to us. So I'll send out a follow-up letter like, hey, this is your second chance. If you don't comply, this may turn into a citation. Now, since I've been here, I haven't had to process a citation. So that's where obviously I'm going to look to Lisa for some guidance on that and look at the historical facts of how Corey and Whitney and whoever else before did the program to make sure I'm following their process. But obviously, in my experience in Riverdale, when the code enforcement officer would then file a citation, clearly it becomes a court document. And so he has to screen it appropriately with the court prosecutor of the city and get that court filing. And then obviously the prosecutor will turn it into a case, and then it starts a legal format where the person will get cited and they get, served to come to court if necessary, and those sorts of things. So then it goes through the court process. And really, what I saw in my time in Riverdale is the court will take over. I don't know how far, Lisa, cases of code enforcement here in Centerville have gone to court, but I've seen that in Riverdale.
Yeah, many cities use the justice court criminal process for code enforcement, but our $100 citation, we also have the option to issue a civil citation. And so that's typically what we do first, is the $100 civil citation. But we don't have, now we're looking at collecting it. So I know this has been a problem. Like, they send out the citation, it doesn't get paid. And I said, well, we have to send this to collections, or they're just going to learn, they don't have to pay it. So there's even on the back end that, and then they also can appeal. So we've had a number, the ones, I always think like 90% of these with the fix-it request, they fix it. So maybe 10%, it's hard and we have to walk them through it. And then you've got the 5% that really want to fight it, and then they can appeal it, and we have to hire an administrative law judge. But we'll still have all of that those problems on the back end, even with a code enforcement. But there is a lot of, information collection and calendaring and documenting.
There was one prior to Mike's arrival that was really complicated that I did spend a lot of time on it with Corey, and it was a citation, and I believe it was trying to be appealed. Mm-hmm. It was challenging just collecting the money because there was still a belief that there was no fault in that, there was no violations, and that one was extremely problematic. So when you get a big one,
there is one in the city right now that I'm working with that very well could go to a citation, so we'll see what process we take with it. I don't foresee the resident taking care of their responsibility.
And Brent, remind us, this is a part-time, hourly kind of subcontractor proposal that you've suggested.
Yeah, so it's not contingent upon that they're definitely going to get 28 hours a week or 12 hours a week or anything. It's going to be complaint-driven, but ultimately, the vision is citing people could be essentially the easy part. But if you're working with a resident and you want to have a compassionate approach and work with them, it does take time. And I think that's the approach we want to take. But we do have areas in the city that do need a proactive approach, and that's primarily in our business park area where we get a lot of complaints about on our west side. But I don't want to go in there and just start citing them. I want to go in there and start working with them and create some pride in the area, and that takes time.
Spencer, for what it's worth, I mean, I love this discussion, and this is why I want to budget this money, so that we can actually like schedule a work session and have a really in-depth discussion about this very issue. And if we don't budget it, again, then it won't happen. Staff has requested it. I've said I'm in favor of putting the placeholder in. Maybe we think it's a great idea, maybe we don't, but I would love the opportunity to like explore this topic in a separate session.
Okay. And I'm supportive of it staying in the budget as well, because in my experience, I see it as a need within our city based off of citizen complaints, which means citizen demand. You know, there's a demand for it within our city, and based off of our personal experiences.
Yeah.
Now,
To your earlier point, though, with regard to the property tax increase, like, I don't want to raise property taxes, just raise property taxes, but we are taking out a huge chunk from our savings to put towards capital projects, needed capital projects that our staff has been limping along with equipment like for a long, long time. So thank you, staff, for making it work as long as you did. But now we're depleting that savings, and so I'm certainly open to considering a small, what you're proposing is a small property tax increase to help try to replenish that capital account savings.
And we could talk about.
Keep it consistent, but, and
Right,
so
'cause I don't want the
can
big
be
hike, right? Like, I'd want to avoid the big hike.
Right. And I think that's how I feel too. I think the reason I'm asking Brian a bunch of questions is because I think he and I are not aligned on some of these issues, and I want to understand better where he's coming from, because I do think that the varying opinions help to make an appropriate budget. So I get what you're saying, Shaylin. Yes, let's just put it in and then we'll deal with it a little bit later. But I do want to understand a little bit better because, you know,
Because we could take a slash and burn approach too to cuts. I mean, I could identify 9 things right now that we could cut, but I would say that cutting those out kind of cut out what makes us a community. I mean, I could say, well, why are we putting the new hard copy newsletter back in? Let's take that back out. I know, right? Right, yeah, but are we serious about cutting?
Well, that's true, and
so let me finish the 9 items. That you could cut out the pitching machines and mounds that got added back in. You could cut the rec subsidy by 19 grand and say, kids, you got to pay more in fees. And you could say, no, we're not going to do our park playground, and we're not going to do pickleball courts. And Whitaker Museum, you're now going to be taken care of by a committee, and we're not going to fund $95,000 a year to you. And we are not going to subsidize trees in the sidewalks and taking care of those things. Like those, you could do a whole bunch of cuts, but I am not a proponent of that. I feel like all of those things are things that make our community a community.
So have you added those up? Like
I could.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. I mean, you got your rec subsidies 19, your Whitaker's 95. Trees and sidewalks is what, 150
add it up and let Brian talk
K
for a
a
minute.
year.
Well, let's talk about the League of Cities and Towns. We pay $16,000 to them. The Ferguson Group, $60,000 to them. Let's talk about those, because those don't make us a community. Those are just expenditures that go out.
The Ferguson Group gets us $1,575,000 at the cost of 300 grand. That's cutting out a revenue generator.
You know what? That is speculative.
No, it's really
It's
not.
speculative. It is speculative. You cannot
evidence. It's not
guarantee me that
speculative
money.
when you actually have
You
numbers.
can't guarantee me that
I
money.
want to address that one.
That's great.
And here's why, because in my professional life, I have helped chase those grants, and that does require a very specific skill set. And they are providing something that, frankly, those grants are super competitive. They have done, that's why I wanted to know some of the details on some of the ones that they did chase and didn't get, because it's not unusual to be told no on, especially on those competitive grants. So you can say that it's speculative all you want, but that would not be an accurate assessment from somebody who's watched cities and clients of ours from my private job have chased them, and they have helped us get significant funding that we would have to levy property tax increases and water enterprise fund increases to pay for. So you can not think it's worth it to continue to fund it, but there's no question in my mind that between that and staff's willingness to chase those and the mayor's willingness to work with our legislative body that, you know, federally represents us, those happened because of a lot of hard work, and it would be disingenuous not to appreciate that. Not just our staff and mayor, but also Ferguson Group who helped us get them. Is it still worth it to fund it? I think we can have that discussion, but it's not fair to say. We don't know one way or another, but I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure because I've done enough of it and I've seen enough no's to know that they are skilled at what they're doing.
You mentioned the Utah League of Cities and Towns. What is your understanding of what benefit that we get from that?
What is the benefit we get from that? I would ask that. I've been there a couple of times. I wonder, what is the benefit? They are, it's just a group of people that show up at a convention, and there's some vendors that try to sell their services and their wares. What do we get out of it? We could actually get something tangible for $16,000.
No, Brian, can I just answer what I've seen of Utah League of Cities and Towns, because I sit on LPC. We go every Monday during the legislative session. Those guys, I cannot believe the amount of research and background that they are providing, watching bills, protecting cities, protecting land use rights. We have an absolutely very aggressive legislature who wants to take power from cities, and they are protecting that.
Brent, I'm just gonna call this one out because Brian has identified it, so we should probably discuss it. I mean, you've included in the budget this item, and I presume that you have put it in there for a reason. So before I take something out, I certainly want to understand why it's there. So can you address that issue? Why is it, help us understand why you have it in the budget, what benefit that you see.
The League of Cities and Towns?
Yes.
Well, that's our annual membership, and there are some cities who choose not to participate in Utah League of Cities and Towns. It's not many, but ultimately having the opportunity, and quite often do we get emails, and Mike Eggle will get emails, and even Lisa, we're responding to requests because the state legislature just doesn't understand what we deal with as cities. So we're engaged in the process, and we have a voice. And the League of Cities and Towns is by far one of the most critical lobbying groups at the state level. You have some cities who even have their own lobbyists in addition to the league, such as Sandy and them, because they want their interests protected. Because sometimes if we don't have a voice at the league, we could be carved out. And there are cities that have been carved out where a sales tax, like for example, a few years ago, manufacturing sales tax went away for a certain thing, and it impacted this one city greatly. It helped every other city out, but this one city who was not participating was kind of cut out. So they do their best to represent us all, but ultimately we have a voice, and we are constantly battling the state legislature and their lack of understanding the one size fits all, because West Valley messed up that all of a sudden we've got a new rule that we have to abide by. And to give you an example of how scary it could be, the state of Oregon, the planning is not done at the city level, the planning is done at the state level. The state actually will tell you what you are allowed to do in your city and what you can't do. So that is kind of what we're afraid of. That's the slippery slope. And so our representation at the league and those conversations in LPC, we have a voice, and we're able to participate and help educate. And
does the League of Cities and Towns, does the overall goal of that organization benefit the people of Centerville?
Absolutely.
Or is it, absolutely, tell me one specific way.
One specific way is the state legislature decides that they're going to tell you what you can and
You're
can't do with
spending
your yard.
on one thing that.
No, I'm just, this
Okay.
is an example. The state
Okay.
legislature is constantly trying to challenge our ability to control local authority. So you as a citizen of Centerville might lose your ability to have local control decide what happens with your home. Or you may not be able to decide that the multifamily housing, the 3-story apartment building goes next door to your house because we don't have any control over that because the state decides that's what the state needs.
I want something specific that
Well,
it's
that
done
actually
for
did
us.
almost
This is
happen
what we're
this
fighting
year.
all the time.
The last legislative
But it
session.
didn't.
Yes, it did.
But it
Right,
didn't
but
happen.
do you know why it didn't
Because they fought
happen?
back.
That was Utah League that was fighting that.
Yes.
They were working, I cannot believe, that thing
So-
came up very last minute. It looked like it would pass, and they were working they were crazy busy.
So one of the bills that didn't pass that was brought up that we fought hard against, and it looked like it was going to pass, was the governor was going to be able to select 3 sites in the state of Utah, 500 acres or so, and decide how that planning and zoning is going to be. Because the intent is
They
trying to
had
get a
an
Fortune
overlay.
50 company here in the state prior to the Olympics. That was a last-minute bill, and it had a lot of support. We spent a lot of time calling our representatives, getting engaged, sharing our input, and it just kind of died. It didn't go anywhere because we killed it. Could you imagine if you coming in and saying, I want 500 acres, or our west side over here, I'm taking the 120 acres over there, I'm building whatever the heck I want, and you have no say. That's how it benefits our city.
That is exactly.
We're fighting these things constantly.
And let me just,
Attend
You
an
can call
LPC.
Kate Bradshaw, Bountiful City Council member,
Well,
who's the
you can
president,
call-
and talk to her.
you can call Roger too, who lives in this community and works for Utah League of Cities and Towns. You can call Justin Lee, who lives in Farmington but lived in Centerville. There are people on that staff that personally care about this community as well as Davis County, so.
I will say, after being on the council for a long time, I was a little like Brian when I started. But with the leagues of town, I was kind of iffy on, what are they doing for us? But talking to the people, they have helped us with keeping our zoning. And Corey used to say to me all the time, you need to do this because the state's going to take that someday. I think they probably still will take that to a point someday, but we're pushing it down the road. And I think our residents, what do we have, 16,000 residents? I think they'd each pay $1 to keep our zoning within Centerville. And that's what it is $16,000. I know that I'd pay way more than $1, and I doubt there's anybody more tight than I am in Centerville, to keep my zoning and have a say in my zoning. That's a lot of the reason I'm on the council, is I want to say that I have a say in our zoning. And I have watched the bills come and go through the years, and I know that it's pretty scary to me how hard the state is fighting to force us to with the zoning, or to take it over. I mean, they could take our historic district, they're all old homes, and say we have to let people build whatever they want over there and knock them all down. If you can have multi-dwellings, it would pay any developer to knock down 4 homes if they could put up 12 condos. And so for that reason, I want to be on the council and I want to fight it. So I'm glad to pay the League of Cities. I know they do other things, but I myself will pay my share of the $16,000 to have the people that are on the council that are supposed to be representing me to have control over the zoning and I do think that the state legislature, I know we're on television, but most of them are realtors, developers. I mean, it's to their advantage to have to make us allow those in our city.
Do we have the same votes, Brant, as, say, Sandy, do they have more votes?
It's weighted.
It's weighted? Okay.
I should probably just chime in. I do think that the League of Cities and Towns is an amazing resource for the city. And I guess it's not just the lobbying efforts, but the networking that they provide for all the cities and the staff, and as well as training. So for instance, this might be something that helps individual citizens of Centerville is Centerville is not spending money to pay me or our community development director to draft ordinances or to read, hundreds of bills. They just summarize them for us and help us understand this is what you need to, learn and affect. I'm not as involved on the legislative side. I just wait till they're done and then I try to implement it. And so that's where it's helpful for me. It really saves, I think, our staff a lot of time, which saves citizens money and the city as well.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. So Brian, think about it. If Lisa were trying to keep up with that, we'd have to have additional staff to help her. I can't believe what they cover in a legislative session. And I would encourage you, even if you just attend one time or listen in to the LPC, it is truly mind-blowing and dizzying to think of all the things that they're tracking. And then on top of that, they're asking us for input during that time. Like, we have very active, and this goes back to the same, the legislative stuff, but they're running, what do they call those polls? I don't know. But we get on some little app and we're voting on the polls.
Slido.
And they're Slido. And they're taking that information. And so for $16,000 a year, we're getting a very powerful opportunity that, yes, sometimes we are definitely asked to go and reach out to our representatives legislatively and ask them not to do something, but a lot of times they're lobbying for us. And the legislature is very aware of the weight that is behind them, which is the elected officials in the cities and staff. So that one for me is.
And I don't know how
really
much I
important.
missed. I apologize for leaving. But back to the Ferguson group, I can see where Brian's coming from. That's always been one that's made me a little stressed. I was actually almost against it when we started it, and I was going to give it 1 year, and obviously the first year was very beneficial, so we've stayed. I don't want to be the person at the casino that wins $10,000 and stays till they've given back $11,000. So I can see where Brian's coming from. So I'm willing, and here again, after talking to staff and knowing that we do have the iron in the fires for some, I've actually even been asked by department heads to give them 1 more year on some of these stuff that they're trying to get. But I am with Brian. I think Washington is changing. And so next year I may really reconsider that depending on what we get and what grants there are. And that was one of the reasons I want to be able to see what's coming through. I mean, obviously that's their job. They're not going to come and say, there's really not any grants, so you guys should probably not do that. That's not going to happen. So we need to do our homework. If we're going to pay that kind of money and it's our citizens' money, we need to make sure that they are what we need. And so I am willing to give them 1 more year because I'm still going to be well into the black. But I'm not willing to pay back everything we've got, hoping that next year we're going to get more. Next year we're going to get more. If we go 3 or 4 years and we're not getting anything, we need to reconsider pretty fast. But Washington's changing this year enough that I think in a year we're going to know whether or not it's something that's beneficial to our city. So I'm willing to give them this 1 year. But I will be with Brian and look at it next year, and I will follow it very closely this year to see what they're doing.
And I think all council members are keeping an eye on it.
Right.
I don't think it's just 2 council members.
Right, oh, I agree. I'm not trying to say that I.
Of the monies that we've applied for, we've achieved 30% on the lower-ish side.
We got one great big one, so it kind of skews it a little bit, but that's okay.
No, but I'm talking about also what we've chased after. We won't win everything. If we're gonna chase federal money, we won't win everything. I'm saying that of the ones we've applied for, we've achieved 1.5 million of 4.5 million that we've applied for.
Right. Well, like I said,
And that doesn't include what's pending. I'm just talking about wins and losses.
well, like I said, we did get a big one, and I realize that I'm not gonna give it all back. And so I am gonna watch them close. I am gonna see the climate in Washington, and we'll just see in a year where it goes. But for this year, I'm willing to leave it in the budget. But I am, you know, and I'm thankful that Brian brought it up and you know, that made us aware that we're very, you know, we're watching it very closely. And hopefully they're watching us and they know that we're watching them very closely. So they better get on the stick and get us some money.
I've given them a lot of grief over the last 2 years. I guess what I'm saying is tonight was a very different presentation in my mind because they're showing, you know, one of the things I said is what are you applying for? It doesn't need to necessarily be a win for me to appreciate that we're seeing effort being made.
Right.
And so for me, that's why I maybe do feel different about it today versus a year ago. I'm not saying I wouldn't change my mind, but
Did I miss anything else I need to get on my soapbox?
We talked about code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer. I would like to know your.
It got belabored and, well, sorry, I was hoping to
I was hoping
push
you were
that off
gonna be
until
back
you'd be
before,
back, yeah.
No, as you guys know, I'm not really pro for the code enforcement officer. Don't think it's what our community really wants. I am concerned that we are not doing the code enforcing that we should be doing right now. I don't want somebody out there looking for things. If we, down the line, decide to have a code enforcement, I want a monthly report of every enforcement that he does, every letter that he sends, every
Or
email
she.
that he sends. You what?
Or she.
Or she. Well, yes, them. I would like them to send me I would like that presented to the council so that we know, and I want them to be hired knowing that it's kind of a trial basis to see if it's really what we want. If I start getting complaints that they're out harassing people that aren't bothering anybody, they're not gonna last very long. I am concerned, and I love Mike and Sydney, and they know that this is kind of my soapbox, but that department has done it for a lot of years. If we're gonna take it totally away from that department.
Are we taking it away from that department?
Yes, because they're the ones that are doing the whole thing right now. Then they should have time to pick up something else. I mean, we are taking a big share of their work away. And before we get one, between now and then, I'd kind of like to know the complaints that are coming in and what's being done about them, so I know if I need a code enforcement. Are they getting 6 phone calls a week, but they only have time to deal with one? Or are they getting 6 phone calls and they're dealing with all 6?
I 100% agree with you on that. Shaylin brought up a good point that if we can set aside the budget, then we get to have that opportunity to have that discussion. Because I agree with you. I have lots of questions too. I'd like to know what we're currently doing. It is complaint-based. I'm assuming we could keep it complaint-based because, you know, it's not a guaranteed amount of hours. It's, if there's 12 hours of work for the week, that's what they get to do.
But if they come to me at the end of the month and say, I did 12 hours a week, and I sent out 6 emails, and I did 3 visits, there's a problem with that. And I don't know that we really have enough to keep them busy enough. And so my concern
But
is
they
they're
go
gonna
away.
go.
They only work if there's work to be done.
Right, but it's gonna be, it's easy to sit here and say that, but code enforcement is really hard. I think Mike and Sydney will both tell you, they don't either one wanna do it. Corey didn't really wanna do it either, and I rode his butt all the time. So it is a hard job. So now we have created a job that it takes a special person to do. And then we're gonna say, well, we might give you 5 hours a week, or we might give you 10 hours a week. So who's gonna take this job for 5 or 10 hours a week that's only gonna get screamed at? And then if they want to make it into a good job, they've got to be able to give us numbers. And are they gonna have to find things in order to justify themselves? Because I don't know that we have enough coming in, but I am frustrated because, and Brant's brought this to my attention, in all fairness, I have called and complained and things haven't been done. Not just with these guys, but way before these guys. You have too, Gina.
That was my question for you, was how much of the complaining, I feel like you deal with a lot of it.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say I do a lot of complaining.
No, I feel like you deal with a lot of the, like, frustrated residents who are like, why isn't this being dealt with? and I've dealt with quite a bit in the last couple of years, for sure. Frankly, this water rebate program will require some potential code enforcement if we're gonna adopt it.
It's not, there'd be, I would never adopt it myself because I've sat down with Corey and looked at the numbers. There's nothing in the city for it. There's nothing for the city in it.
What do you mean?
So if the water department, if Weber Basin wants to do it, Weber Basin needs to.
They don't have land use control is the problem. So that may be the thing that we were not realizing before is they can't enforce land use control. That's cities. So they have a little bit of an issue in doing that. That doesn't mean that we have to handle the whole thing, but.
Do, because they're not. I'm not gonna use a code enforcement for that. If we do use a code enforcer, it would save us some of our police department. But then
what if a neighbor's calling and complaining about it? Doesn't that then fall to the code enforcement?
I love this discussion, and I would so love to have it in a very targeted meeting where we're specifically.
Well, I think we're gonna have it, but I think you have to get to the point where people are, you
So
gotta get
here's-
enough votes to get
yeah,
it into
so-
the
That's
budget.
true.
So
Can we,
that's
maybe that's the question.
Yeah, that's the question. I believe that there is a majority support for leaving it in the budget as a item, as a budget placeholder, and that we have staff directed to provide us with additional direction in terms of what complaints are coming on, how would the process work, to get into the specifics of it. I'm supportive of the code enforcement officer statement.
I will be reluctantly supportive of it as long as we have this discussion.
Yeah.
Totally.
That may be several hours, because I think there's,
Yeah.
I'm not sure Brian's got to say everything he wanted to, and I'm not sure
Right.
Robin has
Well,
either.
I think
so
we need
I-
the information brought to us. So if I'm gonna leave it in the budget, I want Brant and I want them to know that I want that monthly report starting now. I wanna know how many complaints you had and what you did for them. I will put it in the budget as long as I can have those two things every month.
Mike's
How many
shaking his
complaints?
head with a thumbs up, Robin.
Okay,
He's
how
tracking it
many
right
do we
now, he
have,
said.
and what have you done on them?
What was shared while you were gone is you get a quarterly report already from Donna. It's already included. so-
We're not finding out phone calls, we're only finding out things that something was
But
done
again,
about.
so Councilor, keep in mind that the most recent complaint that you've shared with me and Mike on several occasions, we've
Right.
spent a lot of time on a non-complaint. It shouldn't be Mike's job to chase that person down to get the complaint.
Right,
We
so
have
that's what
spent-
I want to know, is that he had 3 phone calls on that, but he didn't do any follow-up because he didn't have an actual
Okay,
complaint.
so do we track Councilor Meekham's calls to us saying so-and-so's complained and there's no complaint? Because we're spending a lot of time on those too. And it's not just you, it's a couple other council members too, that we're spending time on that are non-complaints. But it's a code enforcement thing that is dominating a lot of time, that is a non-complaint.
But
that-
I think that should count as one. If I'm calling and saying, I've had a complaint from this person, will you look into it? Then that counts as
disagreeing.
one.
It's
And
not
what
a
did they
resident, that has
do?
nothing
And
to
they
do with
didn't
it.
do anything because
not the
the
resident.
person wouldn't follow up on it.
She's not the one complaining about it, she's getting the call,
I
and we need to
haven't,
get the call.
I have
That's
another one
making the complaint.
that I haven't been to these guys about,
He hasn't
that
witnessed
I went before these guys were on several times, and when Brant brought this up, I thought, this has affected a neighborhood for 15 years, and nothing's been done about
So
it.
it's one complaint, but it's 5 phone calls.
Right, but that's easy to say.
But that's, okay, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's hard to document the non-complaints as we try to follow up and chase down, because we do want to follow up. Mike wants to enforce it.
I think this lengthy discussion is actually evidence of the need for a code enforcement officer, but, of course.
Well, like I said, you need to know if you're gonna take part of the code enforcement from the police officers, that's gonna affect us. I mean, that is a workload our police is still doing, our public works is doing.
Okay, so let me ask this, whether or not there is an official complaint, can't we get some feeling from police office, police department, from Mike, from Sydney, that says, hey, even though we don't have official complaints, I may be spending 20% of my week on average, you know, I mean,
But I
I think.
want to know what those complaints are, because I don't want that just to say a generic, I think I'm spending 20 hours a week making phone calls. No, I want to know what the complaints, documented or non-documented, are. I don't think it takes that long to say, we've made 5 phone calls on this one, or we made, I don't care if it's 5 or if it's between 5 and 10 phone calls. I don't think they need to document every little.
In the
thing.
interest of moving on, let's just take it out and we'll talk about it later. This is getting, we are trying to solve a problem here, and it's going to require a lot more time. I'm happy to remove it. We'll have a work session conversation, but with the understanding that it could be added in later to the budget. That's fine. I don't think you're truly understanding what some of our challenges are, and I don't want to necessarily try to solve it tonight. But if it's going to get this conversation forward.
Well, I'm fine to leave it in, because I do think we should.
We should just move on, is what I'm trying to.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
So whatever you want, I'm leaving
Well-
I'll leave it in the budget unless you tell me to remove it, so.
I guess based on the discussion, I think it does need to stay in the budget.
Yeah.
I'll leave it in the budget, but I've told you what I think needs to happen.
Okay. I think it may be impossible to totally get everything. I mean, we may have to do some
Well, that's what I'm saying, it could be a generic.
guesstimating.
Right.
It's anecdotally, it's conversations to help you understand again, the process that it takes, so.
And also,
giving
I
you
think
ones
it's
and
helpful to
zeros
know
may
that
not
as part of the,
help you
I'll
understand.
just say this to end, that it's a part-time employee. You start it for, we still have a discussion, you maybe implement it for a month or 2, and you can gauge, hey, did this really work? How did this affect us? And if it works, we continue it, and if it feels like this is not working like we anticipated it would, it's part-time.
And I am kind of laughing because I think we're putting all this time into it, and how hard it is to hire a good employee and then to hire one for less than 10 hours a week to go out and get hollered at. What are you gonna pay them per hour? It's gonna be.
Can I hire a part-time planner? They'll do code enforcement stuff? I'm just, sorry. I'm being facetious a little bit.
Here's
Okay, moving on. We gotta move on.
But just for moving on's sake, you've already suggested.
Part-time attorney does code enforcement?
You've already suggested cutting out training, some range of $4,000 to $9,000. Is that right?
So 5 in the general fund and then potentially 4 to drainage, but I need to have a conversation with Mike.
Correct. I mean, that's kind of in that
Okay.
discussion. Bryce, don't be mad at me. Maybe we look at cutting like 10%, like 3,000 out of the branding.
He's already done it. We're good to go.
Already done?
Yep.
Okay, so that would
Okay.
be my suggestion.
Did we put in the software for planning that they wanted?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question with that. Corey told me, or Brant told me to call Corey and talk to him about it. He said we looked into it a year ago.
Did I tell you?
Well, you didn't tell me to call him, you said, have you talked to Corey?
Oh, no, I was talking to you about code enforcement, not the software.
Okay, well, I talked to him about the
Okay.
code enforcement at the same, I talked to him about both at the same time. He had looked at it, and he said we didn't have enough applications coming in to justify $40,000 in software. And so that was a thought that I hadn't thought of, is, is this gonna help 20 people, 300 people, or 3,000 people if I'm gonna pay $40,000? It needs to be streamlining a lot of applications, not just a few. And that was why we didn't do it before, when he said he had spent a lot of time looking into it and had actually came to Brant, and the two of them had talked it over and decided that there was not, for the amount of money that he had found it for.
Can we have a little reminder of the software?
Mike?
I know we talked about it, I just am not remembering
Right.
all the details of what the software was going to do, so.
I want to say it was 40,000 a year and 25 a year after that or something.
It's software for mostly building permitting. Right now, you have a building permit technician that's doing everything with paper documentation. and then retranscribing everything into the computer after an applicant fills out the application and submits it.
So how
and then
many
tracks
building
it.
permits do we get per month?
Oh, man.
A lot.
I
It's in
don't
our
know.
report.
You
I would
get a
say
building permit
on a monthly
report.
basis, I think there's 30 to
There's
40.
a lot. Yeah, there's usually about, it's probably 20 to 30.
Brian, you're laughing. You're not reading your reports then. I'm sorry. You can laugh and
30 or 40,
It's not, hey,
There are.
it's not
there's
necessarily
mechanical
a new.
permits. It's not a new
Could be
build. It's
electrical
all sorts of
build.
or
permits.
plumbing.
Solar, everything requires a building permit. Brian, I guess you're not reading them.
I agree with you. I think
I
there's
read every
not
single one
many.
of them.
I can't remember from the last one, but I agree there's quite a few.
There are quite a few.
And a building permit's not just one visit.
Right.
It's multiple visits.
And,
Right.
and the other thing is, nobody can make any payment for building permits over the internet. It has to be called in or brought in here to City Hall offices, so there is no online fee taking. There is for planning and zoning permitting and business licensing permitting.
What's the cost of the software and what's the annual?
The cost of the software is $25 each year. It's a 3-year contract,
25 each year?
$25,000 each year.
And then wasn't there a start?
And there's a $12,000 implementation fee, but we could use it with this year's budget, but I've got to use those monies obviously before January 3rd.
And is this the cheapest,
There is a cheaper option, but it's not a very good software. It's maybe a very small step up from what we have. It would be able to do the building permitting portion, but even, I had a conversation with our current software provider just for planning and zoning and business licensing, and he even admitted in the call, yeah, we're not able to provide you with all the services that you would need for your city with the current software. That's what he said in the phone conversation I had with him.
Could this be added to the cost of a building permit? I just
talked
said, if it's 15 a month, then,
Yes.
and it's 25,000 a year, it's about 140 per.
We would
permit.
have to create a legitimate nexus, but we have talked about that as well internally, and I've talked to Lisa about that, about raising our building permit fee. I have a suspicion that the building permit fee in Centerville has not been raised in quite a few
Our
years.
building permit fee is one of the lowest, due to the fact that Sunrise has told us repeatedly to increase it, but we have not taken a position, because many cities have done this, to generate revenue from their building permits. And cities and the state legislature has challenged cities on that.
Can't do that.
And
I don't-
and it's been challenged, but it
your
hasn't
point
been
is let's get
successful.
reimbursed.
But what I've,
I'm not asking for making money on it, I'm just
oh,
saying,
no, no,
let's cover our
correct. Oh, no, no,
costs.
so what I'm saying is, we have kept it low, so an increase is not detrimental, and we're still below, well below
And you would
market.
still have to show, I mean, we still have to articulate a legitimate nexus to the increase in cost, but I think the software could be one of those articulations of that increased fee.
Having just dealt with the building permit issue, my contractor had to come to Public Works. He was very frustrated
Yep.
because he had to make multiple trips to Public Works to get to, he had not done, was not familiar totally with everything in Centerville, and that's on him, but the reality is if he could have done some of it with web-based software, I think it would have been easier. And here's the reality, like, I might have paid a little more for my building permit to cover this software, but you think he worked for free? No, he charged me.
well, and so I agree with that, and I feel bad, you guys, I'm not, remember I fought for your salaries. I'm not attacking planning.
I just think you should come see our board, Robin, and Cindy's office and see the list of applications we're dealing with just from planning and zoning. It's kind of, I don't want to say offensive, but it's hard for me to hear you say, well, if we're gonna take this away, you have nothing else to do, let's fill it in with
Well, I
something
don't
else.
think you don't have
When
anything else to do,
When
but
you
if
could
that.
come see what we're doing, we're very, very busy, and there's only 2 of us, and then Donna does what she does so well. I would like to actually be able to do more economic development benefits to bring in income to the city. I would like to get more involved in RDA, but I am unable to because the burden of the day-to-day operations of all the tasks we are already doing are so intense. I can't find ways to generate or seek more opportunities for economic
Oh, I
benefit for
can
the
see
city.
that, and I can agree with that, and
And I
that's
would
why I
like to
feel
do
like
that.
I'm coming across defensive. But what I'm saying is, if you're not doing that, you will have time for something else, I guess is what I'm saying.
It would be that I would do the economic development stuff I
Right.
was asked to do when I was hired. and
Right, I'm not
able to get
asking
to.
you to go out and become the janitor. I'm not trying to find something for you to do. I'm saying that has been a big part of that job. So if we take that away, we should be getting something else in turn, if it's
Let me
economic
put it this way.
development.
I work in a state of anxiety that I'm not doing enough for the city. because I'm trying to manage the day-to-day stuff already. Brian, you may not believe me, but I'm being very candid. I would like to benefit and bring economic income to the city, and I'm happy doing day-to-day tasks. If that's what the political will is, I will do that. But I'm trying to find also solutions. There are plenty of, again, like Councilmember Hirsch said, there are plenty of applicants that complain about the building permitting process. And so I'm trying to look at it from a customer service perspective, that it is not providing the best customer service experience when they're filling out a paper form and submitting it. They have to come here to City Hall and then show receipting to down at Public Works. There's just some things that are broken. Now, maybe there's other efficiencies we can explore. There's also internal processing problems, department to department. Right now, we have a master paper file that goes to water, and then they have to review it and sign it, and then goes to engineering, they have to review and sign it. And so, rather than having a software that can let us all gateway in and provide commentary all at the same time and expedite the process from a customer service perspective, we can't. There's, with the software, even an opportunity, there's a box that lets an applicant type in, hey, I don't know where to go for how to do this with this permit. There's a customer service representative that's immediately available that will respond to that as part of the software that we would pay for, and give responses to guide them and help them say, here's the link, or here's how you do it, or here's resources.
Well, like I said, I'm not against it if we have enough building permits to make it. Now, I can see where Gina says she's got this, builder that's having to drive from Logan or whatever. He would have been glad to have paid $140 to not have to drive down here.
I
Maybe
promise
drive down here 2 or 3 times.
a
but
guy in
had-
Centerville would have paid $140, because every time you have to go personally hunt a human down, it's time, and they're trying
But
to,
then we do have others, so if we're gonna charge, I'd like it to be on either the amount of the building permit, because I had solar put on my house. I'd be glad to drive down there 2 or 3 times for my solar. It's not gonna take me 10, 15 minutes to do that. So I don't want somebody that's just getting, like Spencer said,
But
a
I think-
mechanical or a solar, something like that, to have to pay the same as a $100,000 home remodel or something like that.
but as a city council member, I think it's important to remember too, what he just said. Sending those files from department to department isn't efficient. It's taking.
It opens us up for liability.
And
too.
it does open us up for liability, and building permits there are more legislative laws around building permits and time to review and some of that thing. And so I think that we have to view this a little bit as a liability issue, but also secondly, we have staff that we have all agreed are running pretty razor thin on what they're doing, and it may not be, yes, you might be willing to run down there, but I think we have to consider the time that staff is spending too.
Well, I just wanted to look at and bring that up, because
Yeah,
when
I
they
think-
first brought it up, I'm like, well, sure, why would we be doing paper? I have to admit, and I'm not in touch, that seemed like a lot for that software, but obviously, if that's what it is, that's what it is. But I want to make sure
I
that
want to
we
say
have.
really quickly that I laughed because I handle 30 permits when I was doing residential appraising for the assessors, and it was on paper. And I did that I'd get 30 new permits, and all the appraisers at the assessor's office take on that many permits per month with paper.
Is the county still with paper?
Say
Is the
again?
county still with paper?
Yeah. We take the permits, and we, from the cities, we have a person that puts them onto paper, we transcribe them to the computer. Now, we did just transfer to another system, but we have been using paper.
Okay. The point, Brian, is
What we were talking about
that
earlier.
there is software out there to help be
But
more
the
efficient.
software that we've taken on was required by the state.
Okay, but here's my viewpoint. If it's 30 per month, we've got 2 people, but they're doing more than that, and they're not just doing an appraisal. They have to check in and come, line up the guy to come do the inspection, and
Well,
I
outside
don't know
of,
that you can
outside
compare
of
it apples to apples,
development
I guess.
applications. I mean, that's not, they're just not processing building permits.
He's running the planning commission too.
We're all doing other tasks as well
What are
besides
other,
just the
what are
permit.
other cities close to us doing? It's Farmington, West Bountiful. I'm sure Bountiful has it on, but then they would have a lot more than we do.
Robin, also another thing that the software can do is obviously code enforcement tracking. Not that I'm trying to get back in that, but the software will let us process code enforcement tracking. And clearly, I would utilize it if that was my responsibility to be able to then make reporting available. In addition to planning and zoning permitting and applications, business licensing and building permitting. So it's not just like it's building permitting, it's everything community development would do, the software would process.
I'm supportive of this particular budget item.
I am too.
Just because of the
And I'm not saying
efficiency.
I wasn't,
think
like
the
I said, I
efficiency thing
just
is
was
a big deal.
interesting, and I wanted everybody to think about how many we're using it for.
No,
when
I
we're
think,
doing that kind of
I do appreciate the discussion, and I definitely think it was important to have the discussion. I think based on what Mike's saying and some of the other things we've talked about, that for me, it seems like the efficiency may be worth it because we'll get some other opportunities for these guys to do some other things.
Robin, while you were away, I think I brought up the fact that in our governmental transfers to pay for a lot of our capital projects, we're about 500,000 more, kind of having to dip into our savings. So my suggestion was that we look at doing a 2.5% property tax increase, which is only equivalent to about $56,000, but at least it has a placeholder principled measure of, hey, we need to not just always deplete our savings and to keep that up. I made that suggestion.
And we ran the calculations very roughly, and that would be about $9.48 per year.
We looked at this once before, am I wrong, Brant, where it costs quite a bit to go to truth and taxation, and you've got
And we talked about
put
that.
all of
Gina
that
asked that question.
out there, how much, I mean, we back then decided we'd be better off to go after one every 2 or 3 years, because we weren't gonna really I mean, if it's 56,000, it costs us 30,000 to do it, that's not very beneficial, we'd be better off to go. And at that point in time, we actually upped at that time, deciding we wouldn't do one for 2 more years. Whoever came in, I don't remember what.
I don't remember having a conversation to pursue one every 2 or 3 years, but I could be mistaken. But it's $900 to $1,000, not $30,000.
Okay, so didn't we have to send, we had all those fancy papers made that we sent to all the homes, telling them what we were gonna use it for? And
Yeah, so we did the open house and we sent the flyer out, and we also had a water rate increase at the time. So we had an open house here where residents could see what the water rate increase would do. And we also had the opportunity to discuss the property tax increase,
And what
right?
does it cost to
That was
send a
when-
flyer to every
What's
house?
That was when there was the 40% increase to
Yeah,
pay
that was
for the
the
police.
40%.
No, this was the one that we did that was, Bill wanted us to do 5 or 10, and they upped it to 20, I don't know, more.
You upped it a little more to kind of say, hey, we're gonna go a little more than.
I don't remember the numbers, it was
Yeah,
Bill that really wanted it, and it was,
And I appreciate that Bill did that suggested that in that case. I think if you're looking at a 2.5% property tax increase, I don't know that you would go through you'd still obviously notice the public. I don't know that you would do an open house per se for that.
but what do you have to do, Brent? Do you have to do an open house? Do you have to send out?
No, the truth in
mailers?
taxation
It's
essentially.
still a public hearing, and you notice it for the public
The
hearing.
truth in taxation public hearing is essentially your open house. The open house really was for the water, but we also had the conversation, it's not required. The truth in taxation is
the public hearing.
Is the open house.
And
the
my
public
other saying where I think you're gonna get people if they're looking, when Brent got here, we only had a little over $1 million in savings, and now we've got more than 10 times that. So how much do we keep I mean, you're saying we're dipping into savings, but is that because we're saving too much?
I think I'm looking more at the trend of how much we're dipping into savings.
But we always say we're going to at the end of the year, we don't use it. I mean, last year we were gonna dip in 300,000 and we didn't dip in at all.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but he's not talking about overcoming the 500,000. He's talking about a small incremental, he's talking about 56,000. And so I guess that's my question for you is, like, here's the deal. I'm gonna just say right up front, $1.5 million of excess for a city of this size and a $9 million budget a year, that wouldn't get us out of anything. That wasn't a good place to
Right,
be.
I agree with that.
So you're talking about
Want to
3 to 4
up
months.
taxes when we're seem
But
to be
Robin-
saving more and more and more every year.
You're talking about 3 to 4 months, right? We have 10 million sitting in, like, that we can rely on if we have an absolute catastrophe. That, in my mind, is an emergency savings account. It's not a long-term savings account. Now, I don't think we're gonna, like, have some catastrophe where we have zero income coming in. But in my mind, I think we have to be conscientious of, we are providing drinking water. If we were to have a natural disaster, we may need to do street repairs, we may need to do drainage and or water.
Or a funding match for a grant, or,
And obviously we can go get funding for that, but that all takes time and it may not deal with the immediate needs. So I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, I think,
I'm saying over 6 years, we've gone from 1.6 million to 10.6 million in our savings.
And today, I feel a little more comfortable that we could deal with the
1.6 was
disaster.
definitely not enough, but obviously, we're not going in the hole every year. In 6 years, we've came out that much further ahead. Now, some of it was COVID money, so let's be fair with that.
4 was, so 40% was.
So say 6,000 wasn't. So we've saved 6,000 in 6 years.
No, we had 1.6, so we've saved about 3.5? Maybe it's 4.5.
in our general fund, as
And
of
then we
March
say
of
we're gonna dip
2025, we
in,
had
but then every year
4.5.
we don't dip in. So is that what's gonna happen?
So Gina, I just pulled up our quarterly financial.
That's what we've saved 4.4 million.
Our general fund has 4.5 right now, and our capital projects has 4.7, down from 6-ish.
We're a little more
later
like
last
9.
year. And our general fund is at 4.5, but it was as high as, it's kind of vacillated, but, as high as 8 in 2023, 7 million. So we've actually, there was a transfer over to our capital projects fund of the $4 million.
Yes,
which
yes.
accounts for that, but, yeah.
So I think we've saved 3.5 million in that time frame.
But what do you think about the fact that staff didn't even advise for it? I mean, I just feel like we're pushing that when even our staff didn't come and say, this is what we feel like you need. I feel like as a council.
Can we let them respond to that? You're bringing up a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Want to respond to that?
Well, again, property taxes is a really tough topic to have, and it's a politically charged topic, frankly. And as a city, we do our best to stay within our means without requesting more money. But however, there's always beneficial, and I've shared maybe every year for 6 years now, that the value of a property tax increase, a stable property tax increase, is if we do hit a downturn, which we possibly might in the next year or two, that property tax will not waver, and we'll be able to operate the city efficiently and effectively, providing water and streets to take care of things as we need to. 2009 was a rough year. If I remember, we lost maybe 1.5 million in that recession.
In sales tax?
In sales tax revenue over that year and a half or so. So we're pretty, our economic climate here is pretty good. We've got the staples of a Walmart and a Target and a Home Depot and Colonial, and those are great to have. So we don't dip as much as some other communities might. But property tax is the stable revenue source for the city that if there's a downturn, then we will be okay. We have not projected another increase in sales tax revenue. We're try to be as conservative as possible in that. So we're not adding new revenue, so we're not trying to add any new expenses. We're living within our means. But also there's this need to keep up with COLA with your property tax increase as well. the value in it in this case, regardless of what our budget is, and regardless of the discussion potentially if you agree or disagree with us in the budget, as I've shared my goal, there are certain expenses in Fund 47, the capital projects, that I would like to fund through the general revenue. So I don't know if we could show it, but ultimately we have some ongoing expenses, like police vehicles is on a rotation. So we buy 4 vehicles every year. That's not a one-time expense in my mind, but we're treating it like a one-time expense. And so my hope is that the general fund revenues will cover those costs of those kind of ongoing one-time revenues of $300,000 for new vehicles. We're not covering those costs right now out of the general fund, but we're in kind of a weird year where our sales tax has been kind of stagnant for 2 or 3 years. And I think we're just in a kind of a rough time that it's going to pick up, and we just need to hold firm where we are and hope the economy will turn and we'll be in a better situation. But we also need to be looking for economic development opportunities too, because if you're not growing economic, you're dying. And it's not growing, and we have opportunity here. We need to be focusing on making sure that continues to be vibrant. We've had, I'm going off tangent just a little bit, we've had Gateway come in and steal, we've had Farmington Station come in and steal sales tax. So other communities are being active, and we're just kind of hoping that what we have works for us, and it does. But property tax is going to be that one thing that just kind of holds us firm while we're exploring those other options. So there's always value in a property tax increase. We didn't propose it because we've had this conversation for 6 years now. Councilmember Ince is actually the one who proposed one every year, and he fought for one every year that was never implemented, right? So we've had a couple council members over time say we should have one every year, and then it just kind of falls short.
We implemented his a couple of times.
But not every year.
Not every year.
We had giant
I
ones.
think he wanted a policy.
That's a good point. What Brant and I was going to say, Robin, is we didn't do one last year because we had done some other increases. And granted, we are doing increases this year, but we are going to have an increase this year. So we didn't pass on our sanitation disposal 5% fee increase. We're still going to have our water, our Weber Basin is going to continue to escalate. We're going to have another COLA of sorts next year.
We doubled our drainage.
And so I view this as this year where we haven't done a property tax increase even as of last year or the year before is, hey, it's just a recognition of all of those other inflationary pressures. And it's, again, it's a nominal amount, but I think it's a show of fiscal responsibility in terms of looking out towards the future and keeping that savings. Yes, we are very fortunate, and again, kudos to staff. We're lucky that we got ARPA money. It's a combination of many things, and I want to continue to support that.
Spencer, I'm not trying to short circuit this. We've been going for almost 3 hours, and I'm wondering, maybe
so that's why
a quick break to
yes,
go to the restroom, or
absolutely
just push through.
I've made some recommendations for changes. Staff's already made some recommendations. It sounds like we're going to have this come to us in our next council meeting.
And this will be.
And so it sounds like we have a majority of council members that want to keep in the code enforcement officer for right now. I don't know if we have a majority of council members that want to put in that 2.5% increase. So we've done a little bit of cutting and a little bit of increases as well.
With that, I'd prefer you wait to have that conversation with the mayor present. I think that really matters. So we're going to, as of right now, we'll make those minor changes we've made, and as far as the travel and training and the marketing. Other than that, is there anything else you would like changed to the final budget?
Gina,
great discussion.
You had brought about something about the arts.
Oh, yes. I know we've already had this discussion, but I'm concerned about our contribution to the Bountiful Davis Art Center. I am not feeling in good conscience that it's okay we added some funding for the baseball program. I'm very supportive of that. What I'm not supportive of is that we don't acknowledge and give the same thought and consideration to the arts. And here's why. I spoke with a piano teacher in Centerville today, and she used to be the chair of the Bountiful Davis Art Center. And she kind of walked me through some of the details of how the Bountiful Davis Arts Center is funded. You don't pay to go in and look at the artwork, but you do pay to have a recital there. I know Brian mentioned the library. I have not had very many positive experiences at a piano recital in the library, and I asked her why that was. And she said, well, the opportunity at the Bountiful Davis Arts Center is that those kids get to play on a beautiful concert grand piano. And so that's why the teachers try to do that, because they don't all have that opportunity in their own homes, and it's a one-time deal. I just am asking that we consider that if we're giving to the sports programs, we should equally contribute to that. I know that that is a benefit to the residents of Bountiful as well, and probably our baseball program is fully just Centerville kids, but there are she knew several teachers in Centerville that were using that facility. So that's my.
Brian, with our baseball program, is it?
Well, I would be willing to cut the sports program if that's the situation, or cut the sports allocation. I just don't think we should be spending any more money.
So, but what I'm asking you is, you're down with the baseball, is it 90% Centerville residents?
There's lots of Centerville, yeah, but there are kids from
A few.
Bountiful, West Bountiful.
I'm
we
just
have some
wondering if the
up north.
majority is from Centerville.
Yes, the majority is from Centerville.
And how much does the baseball program cost us over what we?
Well, generally, we subsidize our recreation programs overall based off the budget by 19 grand. Which provide a great benefit for our city. Those teams, the baseball program does things for those kids that very few other programs can provide, which is camaraderie, teaching teamwork, teaching skills, allowing them to get physically active. That program is amazing, but I think that if we're talking about spending more money, which maybe it is, I love the arts, but I don't think we should be spending more money. So if it is an equity type of issue, perhaps we need to take the money out that we would be spending for pitching machines and not be spending the money.
I like the baseball program. I don't really want to take the money
Well,
away from it.
I don't want to take it from the baseball
I think we've saved some
program.
money
I
through the
agree with everything
marketing,
you just said.
branding, and we saved some money potentially in the training line item that I think can allocate, and it's a net zero.
I think it's really important that we recognize, and Brian just said it, about the kids that are playing baseball, the camaraderie, the teamwork, the whatever. Those same things happen with kids that are playing the piano or participating in the arts, whether there is a children's choir that sings there once a week. That provides all of the same things. There are 2 pianos in that facility. There are not 2 pianos in any county library that I'm aware of in the same room. Maybe there are, I don't know, but you, all the time they're doing 4 kids on 2 pianos, or I've even seen 3 kids on a piano, and 6 total. So I do think you're providing the same things. And
Do you have a number in mind that you want to?
oh, I'm just saying, maybe not 1,000. Could we do 3 or 4? And I'm not, I get that it's other communities also enjoying it. I just think sometimes we do need to invest in our kids. What our kids grow up to be depends a lot on what they do as kids.
Brian, how would you feel about 3?
I'm
I'm
going to be
comfortable
outvoted
with
anyway
pitching
on this
machines
one,
and,
so,
I'd still like to know your opinion.
I absolutely love the arts. I support the arts in with my private money. I go out and I buy and I have rented a space for events for kids to have a place to go and have a play or to have a recital. So that has happened, and I've used my own money. Or we've used money from a group of people that are in a private situation. And so for our city to use public money to support that is,
We're doing that in recreation already.
Absolutely.
By 19 grand.
I didn't say that we weren't.
I know.
I guess what I'm
Just
trying to
making
say is, as a council, we kind of
We're
need to
also
be able to
doing it-
agree. Gina's here, she'd like to give 5, you're here, 1 is a bit, could we come to a middle agreement where everybody wouldn't be super happy, but we could be agreeable on, what we would feel comfortable in doing with that?
And my suggestion, and maybe this is not what anybody wants, would be that we found some money out of the marketing branding budget, thanks Bryce, and training potentially as you have those discussions, and you allocate some of those funds that we've saved in a minor way to keep the Petri machines and mounds and give a little bit more for the BDAC.
I absolutely don't want to take anything away from what we talked about for the baseball program. I'm just saying, hey, not every kid in Centerville plays baseball, and they can still grow and develop in really beautiful ways in whatever it is that they've chosen. And yes, Brian, I agree with you. Like, it should be funded with a lot of private money. It frankly is being funded with a lot of private money. $3,000 doesn't run the BDAC.
Right.
And frankly, it was all private money that bought the pianos. And that was a bunch of people in Centerville and Bountiful, including me, that helped pay for those pianos.
Is Bountiful still giving to Centerpoint?
Yeah.
On a grant basis, yes, so they apply for grants through their rep.
And
So they may get ordered, they may not, but generally, yeah.
So not necessarily.
It's not a consistent revenue stream.
okay. I'm fine either way. I just wanted to say my last piece about it. I just feel like that is something that, some of the things that make us the community that we are because of the people that we are. And, I agree, we have to absolutely have private funds to help with these things, but I also think sometimes we have to help a little bit with public funds. And I think we have residents that do support that in the fact that we have a RAP tax, which is Recreation, Arts, and Parks.
Can that come out of our RAP tax?
No, it can't because it's not a capital improvement, right?
I like your compromise. I would be okay with 3,000.
Okay.
I think that's a good.
I like your compromise too.
Is that helpful, staff?
Yes. Yes. We need a break.
We need
If you're going to keep going. Councilmember Haven and I, we
5-minute break and then some reaction. Back, Jennifer.
Very important, the way she.
All right, backroom break.
No trees, in a very sterile,
It's not that they-
Summary action calendar.
It's been a challenge.
We've got a bid award for a drainage maintenance project for 2025 and 26 to Twin D. Do we care to have any questions
It's a long call.
to Public Works on this bid award?
The one bid.
Or discussions? Any background? Mike, do you care to give any background? You've already won the timepiece, but we're all,
anyway, we're still working on it.
I'll be really brief because I don't want to win. So we've advertised out, so we only ended up with a one bid, if I remember right on that. So we reviewed the bid for Twin D. It was very comparable. There was just one item that had to go up, and it was, Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, it was the 8-inch pipe and bigger, right? Video inspection was about it. So we felt like it was still a pretty good price. They've always treated us very fair and done good quality work, so.
okay, thank you. Any more questions or a motion?
I move that we approve the bid award for the drainage maintenance project 2025-2026 to Twin D in the amount of $140,392.
Okay, we have a motion, a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, minutes from both the last work session and the last city council meeting on May 6th. Any suggested or requested changes to those or a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Council report. Robin.
Okay, hang on. I'll keep it brief. Our last thing from the Utopia, we didn't have a meeting, it's a non-board meeting month. So they send out the monthly report. This month has been another good one. We are nearing completion of the Bountiful City Fiber Network, and signups there have increased dramatically. We continue to have steady subscriber and revenue growth across the rest of the system. We have seen some pockets with subscriber loss in areas where CenturyLink, Lumen, and Quantum Fiber. And I know here in Centerville, they've been going door to door. I've had 2 or 3 people that I know that have switched to that, and now I'm getting phone calls that they didn't get what they thought they were gonna get, so. I don't know, I'm not in that field, so. But they have upgraded to fiber, and they're pushing sales with promotional rates going door to door. Certainly something for us to watch. We continue to see increasing demand for our new 2.5 gigs. 1 gig continues to be the most popular. Overall, we continue to see our services increasing, and ours is staying pretty steady at we had 48.98% in November of '24, and we're at 48.17, so we've dropped just a tiny bit. We're one of the higher cities. There is, Morgan has got 69. I was surprised, though, they said Bountiful was really coming on strong, and they're only at 6.76%. So I don't know, what do you consider strong?
Well, how much have they installed?
Well, it just said it was almost finished.
Oh. That is interesting, because my understanding of Bountiful is that they are in desperate need of high-speed internet, especially as you move east. That's what one of their council members told me. So I don't know.
That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Robin. Mayor, do you want to come take your seat back?
No, but I have a report. Ready to the mayor's report?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear from you.
You got a mic?
You don't want to stand at the podium?
No, then my back's to him. I don't want my back to be to him. I'll try and get everybody Number one, I apologize for my tire, but I just got it off from Washington D.C. on a plane, and I texted Bran, and I joined in on the discussion of the budget. And thank you, everybody, for all your input on the budget. Yesterday, I was on the floor for probably the 6th time in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And if any of you have ever been there, you know they have the 2 sides to Independence Hall. And it struck me again yesterday, probably even harder, that government is always compromise. And you even had members of the 13 colonies that didn't care to come to the Constitutional Convention, not realizing that what they were going to do was so critical to America's future. Okay? Now, what we're all doing here is critical to Centerville's future. And I think that we have to not be short-sighted, and we always have to be looking to the future. Okay? There's a couple things I heard in the budget discussion that I think that it's very narrow-minded and not looking to the future. My first, all 5 days last week, and I don't like to talk much about what I'm doing behind the scenes because I just like to work and act and not talk much, okay, and not speak much. But for 5 days, I was up on Capitol Hill, and I met with, and I was there first with the CPAs, but then I went back multiple times in role as the mayor as well too. And I met with Senator Curtis twice. He invited me to his maiden speech that he did on the floor last Thursday. It was a wonderful experience. He had approximately 30 of the senators there that he was able to get on the floor. With him, he gave a wonderful speech. It was very, very tradition, heritage of Utah. If you have a chance, please go watch it, okay? And gave him a big hug afterwards in his office at the reception and said, I'm so proud of you for representing the state of Utah, okay? That's what we're doing here. We're representing Centerville City. I met with Congressman Moore, and he says that I'd like to come talk to you about some things with your city. He talked about some other things as well too. I met with Congresswoman Malloy as well too, and then I met with Connor Meyer from Congressman Kennedy's office. And even though Congressman Kennedy doesn't represent us, I've got to know him quite well over the years when he was in the state Senate. Now, this is why we get involved in politics, both on the local and the state level. Because I heard the discussion, and yeah, we can save some money by potentially cutting out representation before the state and the federal legislature on the short term. But on the long term, it's not worth it. Because if you don't stay in the headlights of these people, yeah, you won't get things accomplished. One of the CPAs that was there with me, her mom is the mayor of Tooele, and I turned to her partway through the conversation when Connor Meyer from Congressman Kennedy's office, who's the deputy chief of staff, who used to be with Congressman Stewart, and I visited with him and Rhonda Perks in City Hall multiple times over the last few years, turned to me and said, Mayor, even though this was on a CPA level, he says, what can we do for you as a city and other cities in the state of Utah? And I apologize to the CPAs, but I turned to the one CPA and said, you know that because your mom's a mayor, that if we do not get federal funds, if we do not get state funds, then we just have to go harder and harder and harder after the tax on our people through property tax and other things. I mean, we have to have those funds. When I first started as mayor, I came into this office and thought, I'm going to run it like my business, and we don't get grants and we don't get funds from the federal government, the state government. Guess what? You got to get money from the federal and the state government. Look at what we've been able to do within our city because of that funding. Okay, so all that stuff is so critical, and I appreciate every one of you here so much. I get very patriotic after I go to DC, and I spent more time on the Hill than I normally spend on the Hill. But after going to Independence Hall yesterday and watching the discussion tonight, I didn't want to come and interrupt out of respect to Councilman Summerhays, Mayor Pro Tem Summerhays tonight, come in and interrupt that great discussion, because I know that he would have turned to me and said, Mayor, do you want to take over? No, that was not my place. I had asked him to fulfill a role I was gone. It's like when I was on the Senate floor and I saw the Senate president get exchanged out multiple times because he had to run off and do things. I mean, thank you, Councilman Summerhays, for what you did tonight. So I am a big proponent, as you could see, of the importance of state and federal funds and staying in contact with the legislatures. Now, what I do, all of you could do if you just, it's not as hard as you think, but I probably am not always going to be here, and I'm not always going to have that voice where I'm campaigning and lobbying for the city over and over again, sorry. And that's why it's so important that we have all of you, we have our staff, we have the Ferguson Group, we have the League of City and Towns. Yes, it seems expensive, but the league doesn't win every battle, but the league, and I'm on LPC, the league fights hard, and it's compromise. That's why I brought this up, compromise. They have to compromise with our state legislatures, and we as a city don't win every battle, but it's compromise, and we get a lot more than if we didn't battle. If Virginia didn't have their delegation there with George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, if Pennsylvania hadn't with Benjamin Franklin, they wouldn't have got to those 13 colonies what they got. They wouldn't have got 2 members of the Senate for the smaller states to help represent those smaller states, to balance Congress, which is based on population. So we have to have that representation. It is so critical to everything that we do. So I'll give you more of a report of my trip later on, but I felt that this report was timely tonight because of what you just discussed. Now, I am going to give my personal opinion, one personal thing, okay? This is the mayor's report. I'm not in favor of a 2.5% property tax increase. We've already done drainage fee increases. We've already done water fee increases. I say we push hard and we get RAP tax on the ballot for sure, and we figure out some way that some of that RAP tax can go to support more than just the Whitaker Museum and parks and Centerpoint Theater, and we can support things like Bountiful Davis Art Center and that type of thing, because those programs do help the wellness of our kids and our adults in everything that we do. But there's other taxes that I think we need to be chasing this year. I mean, really promoting the RAP tax again and getting that through, and that'll be a way to find if the citizens want to fund recreation and parks and the arts and that sort of thing. I mean, if they will vote for that again. So, what did I miss? Any questions for me? okay?
I like this dress down attire. Man, you look good.
It's my Class C uniform, okay? So,
Mayor, I do love what you just said, and it made me think, when we looked at the RAP tax before, a lot of the cities don't do a tax increases when you've got a RAP tax, because that can affect people voting for the RAP tax. If they feel like you're gonna raise their taxes, they're not gonna vote for a RAP tax too, and we don't wanna do anything to jeopardize our RAP tax. For 2.5%, it's not worth.
Really good point.
This is a good perspective.
That, to me, that was something the mayor said that was, I had forgotten, and that is very important, I think.
I like it.
I just want, I mean, maybe love's too strong of a word, but I just like and respect all of you so much. I just realized that we have such a, it's like when Benjamin Franklin left and one of the citizens said to him outside Independence Hall, so what kind of government did you get for us? And he said, we got a republic. It's yours to take care of now. That's what, I love the discussion that was had tonight. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. Some of, I agree with every one of you on certain principles and don't agree with you on some principles. But that's what's so beautiful about our republic, is the compromise. And I hope that we always keep that, we have this freedom, and it's the long term that we're looking at, that we're doing here, and just not the short term. So that's my mayor's report. Thanks.
I can't follow that.
I know, it's gonna be like, good luck, Brad. Yeah. Lisa's applauding.
Ditto, let's go home.
Absolutely.
I think you better stand up and dance or something.
Holy cow. That was awesome, Mayor. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I just have some, I'm just going to report 2 timely issues. The other stuff, I can wait till the next time.
That's what you said last time.
I know. But the one, I just want to update, so Councilmember Hurst and myself and Representative Cutler met with Weaver Basin. Great discussion about conservation potential ordinances. It was actually insightful. We're going to invite them to come to a future meeting, because honestly, some of the items shared could impact our general plan, some ideas and thoughts they have that we should consider.
And I was encouraged to hear that the Hughes Law School could maybe help
Yeah.
provide some assistance, Lisa, in drafting ordinance where you're not burdened with that. Let's take that.
It was very helpful, because I think we had formed some idea or expectation of what they were wanting from us, and Councilmember Hurst and I come away from, okay, they're wanting something a little different that actually is manageable, that wouldn't be overwhelming for staff. And so we'll have them come present really pretty close, because we're wrapping up the general plan here soon. So Mike will, maybe at the next meeting or something like that, we'll have Weaver Basin come present.
Is it, so just FYI, we've had a couple of residents asking about this and sent an email to all council members. So I told them that we'd be having a work group, and they can attend that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, for sure, it's a work session.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the other item is a timely one, is the UTA. So I attended that UTA bus tour a couple of weeks ago. Very helpful. So all cities from Davis County were represented. We ended up down at their place down in Salt Lake and had a great debate and discussion about what does Davis County look like. I shared input about BRT and potentially some challenges along Main Street, but some opportunities potentially on 1250 West Extension, which Farmington was all on board with, and UTA. Again, we've talked about it, but in that group setting, that would be a great service to those multifamily over there. So don't know what that looks like, but I at least put the plug in, and so I shared a few thoughts. They are having this open house on May 29th. This is the timely matter. Have you received emails on this at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the one where we invite you down.
Yeah, you can drive a bus and stuff. Yeah, so May 29th, open house. It could be fun. I think I'm going to show up to it. I think it'd be fun to drive a bus and tell people to get on and off. And anyway, so that's one thing, just remind you to attend that. Everything else I'll wait till the next time. But thank you. That's all I have, unless there's questions for me. Thank you for the discussion. It was great.
Really quick, if anybody asks you, candidate filing week is the first week of June. It's June 2nd through 6th.
Yeah,
Information is on the website,
Yeah.
but candidate filing happens here at City Hall, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Has to be done in person if anybody asks you guys about
And
it.
I saw it on socials, so thank you
Yeah,
guys.
we did a post on social, and obviously our legal notices went out, and it's on the website, so.
Yeah.
Oh, and one other item. We have Public Works Appreciation Week.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we recognize our public works and all the great things they do. We really have an awesome public works, the entire team. Just, I'm really not sure how they do it all with the limited staff they have, because it's a lot that they do, but they do a great job. So yeah, appreciate them. And last week we had police. We had some officers who went to the memorial last week, right, Will? And I think that's a great opportunity. I had the opportunity to go last year, and it was an amazing experience. It was just amazing to be part of the vigil and watch all the anyway, it was amazing. So yeah, Will and his wife take on a pretty big role. Mostly his wife, but they're both awesome for doing that. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Brent. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.